It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, November 21st, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Quite a few important topics, actually, that we're going to be discussing today. Some important developments around Washington, D.C., and like the larger conversation of deployment of the military domestically, which realistically should be very easy to decide, should be very historically documented, but it's because of the political nuance has been used and disregarded by far too many. In Washington, D.C., at the very least, the National Guard deployment was deemed illegal. And we'll discuss what that means and whether it seems they're going to care at all, with the many different examples of the Trump administration deciding to just blatantly ignore rulings from the Supreme Court or other courts in general. That's a very important part in all of this today, because we're going to talk about a few different aspects of this conversation. Trump, really the Democrats are a few of them discussing something that, again, should be very self-evident, something that's easily documented many different ways, that it's okay, legal for military personnel to ignore, disregard unlawful orders. As much as that's a very important the nuanced topic we'll get into about how, even though that's the reality, it's very unlikely, and we'll get into all of that. The point is the Democrats came out and said this, and some, I think 6 or 7 of them came out and made this point. Trump is calling this seditious, traitorous. Like the conversation is going around as if it's somehow an insurrection, because you know what they really meant. Now, that interestingly overlaps with the part about the illegal deployment and what they did and did not do, but it also overlaps with very clear examples of what's happening with ICE. And I mean, I should go back and really start to make a count of how many examples we've seen, but every show we cover in this topic, there's new examples every single day we could find in regard to American citizens their rights being violated by ICE, to put it very blandly, or examples that are much, much more extreme. People that are being shot, the ICE being caught lying about that to try to avoid accountability, people who are mysteriously dying in holding facilities that they're deemed suicide despite being bound behind their back. I mean, really dark stuff. And then this conversation coming up about the ability, the understanding that it's within your rights to disregard, to ignore an unlawful order, it seems to be very relevant today. Maybe this is by design. You can decide for yourself. Maybe it's just because there's more infighting than we've seen because people are recognizing the writing on the wall. But it's an important conversation to have in the larger conversation we've been having on Fine Points and on this show about the constitutional crisis that we're dealing with. And that's not some buzz term. I've never even used that until this current point of the conversation. And what's interesting about it is that we've had a lot of different examples of constitutional issues, but I've never really deemed it to be a constitutional crisis in my experience outside of what we've just seen and what's continuing to happen. It's just unprecedented in my mind. But we're going to start with a quick part about we did a recent IMA panel on the control grid, and I wanted to point to it and just give you a couple of additional things I thought were important. Follow up on the Epstein point. Charlie and I recently talked about that, but I wanted you to see it on the show in case you missed it. Just a very brief opening on both those points. A couple of opening points as well on some partisanship, but I want to get into it in earnest around the point about the people being called traitors for acknowledging a legal reality, whether they had indifferent intentions or not. Talking about the deployment of the National Guard in D.C. in particular being ruled illegal. Talking about, from that overlap, an interesting discussion that Robert's been covering around the Muslim Brotherhood and a group CAIR, and ultimately from Texas, but also coming strong from the federal government to deem them terrorist organizations, and what that may mean and the implications around it, whatever you think of the groups. And of course, that overlapping with free speech and Israel influence in this country that are just undeniable, as well as some continual foreign policy points that we can't avoid. What's going on with Venezuela and how it all truly, today in particular, but as I often point out, truly comes together When you stand back and look at every point of the show, you will find how obviously all these things arc together. And it's not, it's in some cases, I do the show and I try to make that point to try to show you how they connect. Sometimes it just is easily seen what we're dealing with today, whether it's foreign policy or domestic, whether it's about free speech or, what's a good counterpoint to that? Just, all the different, many different topics we're discussing. The point is that you can see clearly how it appears to be part of one larger agenda. Now, it's my opinion, obviously, but I'd like to think that becomes pretty evident the more you do this. So let's start with the point we were making about the IMA panel. More to come, as always, with these. We have more in the works already. A lot of good conversations come of this. And as I said on the show, really, I really appreciate a value, or I think maybe it was in the chat with us, but I really value when we all come together, whoever it is in the IMA, just it seems to bring something new to the table. And I always appreciate that. So this is... the title was IMA, the Growing Control Grid and the Profits of Technocracy. Something we've talked about more than once. The point of, however it ends up happening, the mindset of these people believing that this somehow become, beyond human, whether it's not just even transhumanism, but some idea of becoming gods, of becoming the prophets, becoming the prophet class. It's an alarming thing, and it's not a secret conversation. So I'm not going to get into all that now, but watch the show. We touch on it. The point of whether putting your mind in the cloud and becoming immortal or making yourself transhumanist and becoming, something like that. And the way that they see that changing them, the way that they already view themselves as these megalomaniacs, Silicon Valley, billionaire, borderline trillionaires. Really great conversation there. But I want to start with a couple of points to show you that I think were important. We touched on digital IDs before that, to show you that this continues to come around. Illinois launches digital IDs that can be used at airports. It attaches to the Apple overlap. And it's something that I think Ian made on the point he made on the show, that these things aren't even really digital IDs in the way that we understand this to be happening, but they're trying to get you normalized with something that is just, literally just your driver's license on a screen, even though it's much more than that, but it's just opening this door. So once you feel like it's already happening, then there's no more pushback. And I think that's where this goes. But just recognize that it's happening. It's in front of you. It's coming down around, not just outside in China or outside the country, but in your face, everywhere you look. And it's not that the idea itself is the nefarious part of it, but it's the way that this will be used as they outline. That's what's so baffling to me. They'll literally walk through why this is beneficial for a government, and it's exactly why most people are concerned about it. Except the typical team sport partisans don't seem to want to call this out unless it's a Democrat pointing to it. As well as this interesting development. It's actually from, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, and this is a pretty important story. It's developing, but Senators Kelly and Curtis introduced, Republican and the Democrat, Algorithm Accountability Act. We've already had this topic. We've seen this bubble up more than once. This is the same effort coming up from a different direction, which happens almost every time. I mean, literally, in my experience, it always happens, unless there's just some radical shift in usually what the politicians want. In this case, we know that there's an effort to suppress speech, to control algorithms through, it all centers the conversation around controlling what you can say and think and engage with. But it overlaps in this case with the algorithm. And I think that really much more opens the door to things we don't even really think about in the way that this applies. And that's, of course, in our engagement with social media and the way that they're tracking information from you or influencing you in certain ways, not just your ability to say things online. But it says to amend Section 230, addressing social media harms. Just the first parts here, it says, in an effort to directly address the potential dangers of social media, again, this is the ideas, thoughts, words. There's really no danger there outside of things that may happen that people later commit crimes around. Like the idea that you think that somebody spewing dangerous ideas online will then trick you into being a violent person is like the dumbest argument in the room. That's possible. And you know who does that more than anybody? Your government. Actively trying to manipulate you for any number of reasons. The point is, it's always present, no matter what they do. And again, they seem to be the larger culprits in the conversation. But what I'm talking about is when they do this, even if they are looking for things they want to stop, it always comes down to boxing out certain ideas. I'm of the mind that even the worst of the ideas should be there for you to look at so you can understand why they're bad. Or maybe you disagree and we can have a conversation about that. A world in which we start to box out ideas is exactly what they want and exactly what the right was saying the left was doing. Now they're doing the same thing, which is realizing it's just your government doing that and using different lackeys in the conversation to get you to think it's okay. So we've had this about 230. It's the same old conversation. This is just an extension of it. It's just about censorship and control, guys. It's like saying they want to stop child pornography, which we'd all agree with, but it never really comes down to that. It's about using that as a foot in the door to stop whatever they claim is under that umbrella. And I'm they being just whatever. It's not every individual in every circumstance, but clearly there are entities that want to use these things in a surreptitious manner. Now, it says it introduced the Algorithm Accountability Act. As reported by Kelly's official Senate website, the piece of legislation aims to amend the existing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, infusing it with a duty of care clause for platforms wielding recommendation-based algorithms. These algorithms, integral to the operation of social platforms, will be under scrutiny to ensure they do not lead to foreseeable bodily harm or death, granting individuals who have suffered injuries the right to seek redress in federal court. Now, it's an interesting conversation because I'm of the mind that it's in you should have, well, let's be real. You can sue for whatever reason you want. You can go sue one of these companies if you feel this is the case. The argument is the way that they've protected themselves, it's damn near impossible. And that's because of the government, guys. And at this point, the government has very much immersed itself with this, which is one of the other arguments people make for why this should be something that we deal with in regard to a censorship case. They shouldn't be allowed to censor or control or box out or algorithmically shadow ban your thoughts. But what's interesting about this is the algorithms and the social platforms to stop bodily harm. I mean, again, it's the same idea. So what you're saying is somebody could read an idea and then commit an act, which is the only way that makes sense, and then you claim the idea is dangerous. But somebody could read Snow White and then decide to go out and hurt somebody, or genuinely think that story made them feel like they wanted to because people are crazy, and then say that Snow White's dangerous. It's the point is there is nothing that should be too dangerous to look at, to think about, to consider, because the point is when you talk about horrible things in the past, people often bring up Nazis in World War II. If we never understood these things, then it doesn't change. We need to be able to look at the things to understand why it is so outside the norm or extreme or bad. Always comes down to choice. But it says too many families have been hurt by social media algorithms. Now, is it algorithms? So what they're getting into here is the idea that the media platforms, which I don't even disagree with, are manipulating you with algorithms, but they're making it about, well, to go out there, manipulation to maybe commit suicide or bullying, which obviously matters. But the point, again, that comes down to individual actions. And if the algorithm's doing that, that's the company that should be accountable for that. But what they're saying is we're going to manipulate this. So then, they're accountable for what we deem an issue with the algorithm. It's not going to be about, I'm trying to think of a good example for, them manipulating you to buy things or to watch certain propaganda, which is what they'll use it for. It will, in my opinion, I could be wrong, be used to simply argue that certain context, as I'm saying, or content will be no longer allowed, not necessarily the way that they put the algorithm through. But we'll find out, won't we? And it says it outlining an urgency for platforms to accept responsibility while their services contribute to negative outcomes such as violence, crime, and self-harm, which already is sort of the case. So you already see where this is going. I thought that was an important addition starting, of the 20th that's continuing this push. Well, people are rightly so pulled in a lot of different directions right now. Now, I wanted to point this out, and frustratingly enough, by the way, I don't know what's going on with this BitChute video. Refresh, see if it's still there. But this was something that I added back a while ago because we, got censored on every platform in existence, and I was able to re-add the BitChute videos, but for some reason not working right now. But the point is that I reached out to hopefully they'll get that up and running. James Corbett interview, the social media regulation psyop. 2018, we talked about this, and I thought it was such an important conversation that I reposted it in 2020. And even yet again, I think it's obviously monumentally important because it's exactly the same conversation. The idea that they need to regulate it for whatever the next reason is, I think is a psyop. I think it's to get you in what we just described. James agrees. And he's done a lot of great work on that well beyond that interview. Now, on an additional point on this that we talked about in the IMA panel, White House working on executive order to foil state AI regulations. We already briefly talked about this. It came out very quickly in the beginning that they were not going to regulate AI, sorry, this was in the interview discussion with Charlie Robinson. But the point was that, that's like saying nuclear power, everyone can build something in their garage. We'll just let the free market work. There's a risk to this, more so than anything I've ever experienced if we want to be really very real about where this ultimately goes. So, but it's not about individuals in their garage making AI. It's about the fact that nobody's watching what these billionaires are doing with things that we have yet to even grasp as society, other than certain groups, like I think many independent media, what this truly means for your future. So again, the point was that they said that, or it was in the bill. They tried to float it. It got a lot of pushback. They removed the verbiage. We later saw Lutnick I think it was a conference, openly state that wasn't going to matter, that they were going to not allow regulation no matter what. And but there was nothing in the bill, so it went away. Here, White House working on another executive order, which shouldn't make any difference. I don't believe in executive order. In fact, let me restate that. An executive order cannot influence state law. I don't understand how we think an executive order can somehow influence or supersede states' rights. It applies to the executive branch, but they do it anyway. So now here we have an executive order with the idea to say we're going to stop you from regulating in the states. So it's effectively the same thing in my mind because they do not want to regulate it. So I just didn't want you to miss how important that is. This is continuing. And they're weaseling around these topics. And really, it's not unique to Trump's administration, but it's really, really obvious. And I think worse than I've ever seen it because whoever is in this position, I think this is where it was ultimately going. We talked about this in 2023. Politicians, Derek wrote this for TLAV, politicians and tech CEOs are calling for regulation of artificial intelligence. Can the public trust them? Just wanted to point back to funny. And again, a nod to TLAV. If you're following our platform, the body of work we have from a decade beyond covers just about everything you could possibly imagine. Just wanted to point that out. There's so much work behind what we do every day that nobody looks to. That gets no traction because we're so censored and every other, other than what we force in every day through our shows and our work. The moment it gets about a week old, these things just fall in the background. And there's so much, all the source material. The point is they stood up and said, we want, it says they calling for regulation. And these are some of the very people who are now quietly making sure that doesn't happen. Why do you think that is? Because they want you to see them as the ones trying to. Elon Musk is a perfect character for that. Always throws the bone at you, what you want to hear. And then what he really does tends to be quite different. Just wanted to point out how long this has been going on. Sawyer Merritt points out that Jeff Bezos has created a new AI startup. Surprise, surprise, where he will be co-CEO. Called Project Prometheus. These guys, I'm telling you, there's just something about the way that they view themselves. The names speak volumes, and has received $6.2 billion in funding, some from Bezos himself, of course. The startup is going to build AI products for engineering and manufacturing in fields like computers, aerospace, automobiles. So like the base industry. Probably, hold on, I want to make a point here. I'm going to finish this reading. The company already has almost 100 staff, including researchers from Meta, OpenAI, Google DeepMind. Okay. Charlie and I touched on this, and I've made this point before. I'm telling you, there's something to this. It's not even that hard of an idea to understand. I'm of the mind that this is one thing. And it's just a feeling I have. It's not other than the obvious connected points. But like when OpenAI, for example, got picked for Stargate as opposed to Elon Musk and XAI, it didn't make any sense to me. He was literally right in Trump's inner circle, and Trump's talking about X, and all of a sudden he goes with OpenAI, and Elon didn't even really say anything, and they're supposed to be at odds, yet when you really look behind the scenes, they're working together more than anything. I'm of the mind that this is like one massive thing that's happening, that there is some kind of interconnected, larger thing that's being shown to us in 17 different parts to get you to think that it's not all, and as this whole blob rolls over everything we're doing. It's a broad analogy. The point is just to think about as you see it all kind of interconnect, and all these central 6 people who seem to have their fingers in like everything everywhere. And even from a government perspective, you've got Israel, the United States, all kind of worked in every possible angle. I think that this is something more than just, when you look at the different AI versions, the different bots we're using, I think we're dealing with kind of one thing, and we're going to wake up down the line and look back and recognize that that's what ultimately happened. That's my worry. Now, as Elon Musk says, the most likely outcome, as he tells you, AI will basically run humanity. He said this before, that the bots and the AI will control everything. He says the most likely outcome is that AI and robots make everyone wealthy. In fact, far wealthier than the richest person on earth. Hooray! By this, I mean, he says that people will have access to everything from medical care that is superhuman to games that are far more fun from what exists today. We need to make sure that AI cares deeply about truth and beauty and for the... Right. Lovely. Butterflies and ice cream and rainbows. I mean, it just sounds fantastic. Other than the fact that, even if they tried to make that happen, I don't believe that that's even possible with as he says right here. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. There's a different post he made that David Icke says, liar, beyond belief, liar. It's about total human control, and he knows it. Cult operative 1,000%. There was another one he posted for a similar point where he just said, this guy is so narcissistic and petty and small that he will lie or alter things to cover up the smallest things or make mistakes like H-1B visas or lie about Venezuela, and will literally alter these things to make himself feel big in the conversation. But he's going to make sure it's all fair and balanced and love and happiness. It just doesn't even make sense with who these people are. And on top of that, their history shows you they will cheat and lie and steal as soon as it suits their interest. These are the ones building the future of everything being equal and fair. Isn't that the opposite of what, I mean, the point is that they're trying to sell you on what they want you to think is coming, and everything they show you in every other context, including what the outcomes were for previous lies they didn't fulfill, it always goes in the same direction. And when I say that kind of thing, look, it's like saying the U.S. government never really, like when it coming to warfare, didn't they just consistently destroy countries and claim they were fighting for freedom? Well, yeah, then why wouldn't we go stop trying? Because we know they're not really fighting for freedom. We're not all that stupid. But they go, we're going to save and liberate and regime change for freedom, and then go and destroy everything and steal everything and rape and destroy and torture. And then we go, oh, well, we'll do better next time. The point is, we already know the conversation. We already know what they're trying to do. Let's stop letting the screaming idiots on Twitter convince us otherwise or quiet down people who know better. Here's what Elon posted, and I just want you to think about this future. Isn't this exactly what the right was screaming about when the left was running through the Great Reset? Why is it different? Because Elon Musk put an X hat on his head? I don't understand. Right. So here,
your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Now that's just I'm sure you guys have seen this before. If you haven't, he goes on to quite a great extent about exactly that. About how that, I don't understand how anybody in any corner of the conversation wants that. And I think there's a small fringe of people who just want everything controlled and government to spy on everything because they want to be able to shove their ideas on other people's faces, even though it's not how it's going to work. And that's both left and right, by the way. The problem is this, I think the easy majority, probably the vast majority, would scream at the top of their lungs that they don't want that. But here we are. With the very people, Stargate, Ellison, all of them, OpenAI, all mashed in next to the ones fighting the deep state as they build the deep state. But recognize what he's showing you here. Construction workers, police force, robots. Why is this in any way what anybody wants other than people like Benny Johnson screaming about how you're winning because Elon's the one doing it and how cool it is? I don't understand. I mean, I do. I'm saying that to make a point, guys. I think we all understand what's happening here. And I think it's pretty easy to see if we're have the courage enough to speak it, that most people are very concerned with where this goes. And even if you think he's got good intentions, history shows us that rarely turns out to be, where's my button? There it is. What rarely turns out to be what ends up happening because other people get involved. There's other business interests, but Elon has an obvious track record showing us that, well, you know what? Let's play this. You know what? Never mind. It's a longer one. I was going to check. I played that clip before. The Elon checks all the boxes. I realized I was thinking it was short. It's actually like 5 minutes, so I'm going to skip it. But it's the one where you go through all the different check boxes of literally every bullet point of the Great Reset, and Elon's on record going, "That's what I want." That's and it still to this very day doesn't make much sense when you think about it. Now, one clip that I want to play from Catherine from our recent conversation, just to make a larger point. Censorceptor shared this. Now, they include the link to Jason's repost of the video, but I want to make sure people recognize that the only one that's got all the source material, all the links, which is the whole point of what we do, is the one posted on the Last American Vagabond. So make sure you go to that link if you want all the information and the IMA intro and everything else that goes along with the IMA conversation. Here's the clip from Catherine Austin Fitts discussing the Maha overlap and how it's just a complete scam. If we have Bill Gates and fake CRISPR meat and Neuralink all there with Maha, whether it's MAGA or Maha, they're using you guys. And I just think we all need to admit that by now.
I wanted to point out there's a great controversy going on in Maha, Make America Healthy Again. So there was just a Maha meeting where Neuralink, I believe, was a sponsor, but they got to give a presentation, as did the CRISPR gene editing folks. And,
Right. So CRISPR, Neuralink, these are the people at the Maha conferences with the Trump administration.
there's been a big debate because Kennedy keeps sending out positive tweets on wearables, and then his supporters insist, no, it was the Susie Wiles chief of staff who really did it. But
Remember the one that he just basically said runs the world and can do what she wants? It's just wild, man. It's right in your face.
you're watching an embracing of wearables by the Maha group that is really making a profound contribution to trying to sell the control grid in a way that is truly gruesome. Because there's not, one thing that is not being addressed by Washington is anything to really stop the mass atrocity that started in 2021 and still has not stopped.
Right. And that is COVID-19, really, as she calls it, the great poisoning, which is more than just the vaccines. I mean, glyphosate and endocrine disrupting chemicals and dioxins. And I mean, every single example, if you go through TLAV's work on it and search it on the tag and find all the work we've done on every one of those things, and you can find provable evidence that at some level it's being done on purpose, whether that's because it's cheaper for them to leave it in or because they find a long-term manipulative effort. There's a lot of different things you could point out. The reason I started with that one is because at the base, many people don't like to consider that there's a larger reason, a theory, a conspiracy. But you could simply just argue that it's profiteering and malfeasance, that they are making money by leaving the dangerous things in. At the end of the day, though, you can also prove that there's a much larger game going on when you find out things like glyphosate and the COVID vaccines have some kind of synergistically negative effect in your body. Oopsie, it magically hurts you more than ever. It turns out these things tend to be done by design, in my opinion. But different conversation for today. Let's get into the Charlie Robinson interview and really the Epstein point, but check out the interview because I really enjoyed our conversation. We'll be doing another one next month. We're pretty much going to be doing every month about what the hell is happening. It's always a fun conversation with he and I. Here is some important points I didn't want you to miss from the Epstein overlap that we got into pretty in depth in this conversation, just in case you didn't see it. First, I wanted to point this out. I thought this was an interesting point. Where is that? Reopen. There it is. So I use this image just because it was relevant to a few points that we were discussing, and just it's interesting what's going on in the conversation while he's trying to kind of deflect from it. And I forgot that there's a lot of people that push. I've gotten more than one comment that's like, that's a fake image, Ryan. You're falling for the Democrat tricks and you're using an altered image. Okay, that's interesting. And I've heard that more than once. It's not, by the way. It's very easy to prove. But what's funny to me is that I wanted to reiterate this point. We went over this with the shooting. I forget which one it was. It was the guy that was very clearly a Republican that they tried to claim. I forget which exact case that was, but they tried to claim the Democrats altered his shirt and put a MAGA sign on, right? And you could literally prove, which I did on the show, that the altered image was the one that had it removed. And you could literally prove that. But what I found most telling in the whole thing, not that they were trying to hide and lie or accept whatever they could to claim that it wasn't the Republican, even though both sides do these kind of things all the time, or anybody who falls for extreme partisanship. But what's interesting is that today, we all know, people take images and then go on Snapchat or whatever they use today and alter, remove blemishes. That's like the norm today for most people. I don't even use those apps, or the newer generations, let's say. And so that means that you have these images that are very real, but that have some kind of an altered thing. So you search and it goes, yes, that's an altered image. And people go, fake. Now, I'm of the mind that this is being done on purpose. So now you've got images that are very real that somebody tweaks in the background, a tiny little corner thing they tweak, and the thing then shows is altered. So all that's to say is that this is not a fake image, but yet because when you search for it, I've got mixed responses from Grok, weirdly enough. But the first time I searched, it said, yes, that is an altered image. And I said, that's not true. I can prove it's real. But so I went back and I asked again and simply said, did it take place? And it says, yes, this photo is genuine and depicts this real event that did take place. So but you look online, you're going to find tons of Trump supporters who are screaming it's fake because somebody tweaked an image somewhere and the thing tells them that yes, AI or not says that it's altered. I just think that's very relevant as we go into this deep fake digital altered world that they're forcing us into. So now back to the Epstein overlaps. Now we talked about this on the 15th. what a lot of people are pointing out, which I agreed at the time as well, which is essentially what happened to a degree. Trump reopens Epstein investigation to shut down Epstein vote. Now, Trump signed the document after both Senate and House and ultimately started, even though Johnson kind of floated some idea about a veto. That's called flooding the zone, by the way. That is an effort to kind of just muddy the waters. That's what they do. Or who knows, maybe they were lying to each other, but it did get signed, right? And so then what you were seeing is exactly what we expected, where you have Bondi saying that we're not going to say anything because it's an ongoing investigation. Now, that can only last so long, but if they never end it for whatever reason, or maybe they take 3 years, kick it to the next administration. Not unlikely, guys. I think that's what part of this is, at least one of them. But so here we are back to the same point. Even though it was fake and it's a hoax and there's no more, oh, and it's all child porn, we can't release it. Oh, but here's more. They're lying to you. It's like the most obvious thing in the conversation. And then you got Mike Johnson also coming out afterward and simply saying, or really before, but simply saying that we can't allow them to release these things because there's national security interests, and we have to let the CIA decide what is allowed to be released. So they're just completely preparing, and as Gareth Ike says, oh, that old chestnut. And there's a great article from Ken Klippenstein talking about why, that excuse. Now, here's what the verbiage actually says. These are most of the points that everyone's pointing out in general, and this is the Epstein Files Transparency Act, of course. It says not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of the act, the Attorney General shall, subject to Section B, will point to make available all unclassified records, documents, and so on. Unclassified. Okay. So that means already out of the gate, starting point, no classified information, which is what they can literally deem anything that is something they don't want released. Or maybe it is classified, but this is what we're talking about. This is what people want. Not transparency as much as we can give you, but actual transparency. And so, but also realize that this very transparency, it's not even real transparency, is completely the opposite of what they told you a week ago was even possible. There's no disregarding that. Depict, and then it goes on to say that they may withhold or redact. And here are the different reasons. Contain personally identifiable information of victims. Well, we already went through this. If there is a victim, which I believe there is, that's not in the public face today, like next to Massey, then fine. If you think that's necessary, then redact them for their name. The point is that there are 20 people that are standing next to Massey who are saying, we want our information released. All the people standing up with him. And they're going, we can't let that out because victims' names. Well, they're going, we want that released. So that can't be an excuse, at the very least, for all the people who are calling for this, even though watch, they will do that. I'm of the mind that any one of these things are used just to hide the fact that, what we all actually know is happening here, that our government is completely immersed with the Israeli blackmail network that this is. And it says, depict or contain child sexual abuse materials. Well, they already tried that. Bondi said we can't release anything else because it all has child porn in it. And then magically they released a whole bunch more. So they're lying. And so all they have to do is say that. And how do we ever prove it? So it's just, I think these are all a bunch of different excuses that can be used. Would jeopardize an active and federal investigation, ongoing prosecution. So that's what they'll continue to say as long as they have it ongoing. Depict or contain images of death, physical abuse. What? I mean, we literally are watching a genocide and live stream. You got every media stations reporting and posting content of violent imagery. You got movies every day showing you the most gory things in the world, but they're going to pull back transparency because we can't show that dead person. That's just insane to me. Contain information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense. That means literally anything they want. That's all they really needed. All redactions must be accompanied by a written justification. Great. So they're going to tell you why they're not showing you, and they'll have to trust their reasoning. And then it says, if they make that determination, essentially they will give you a summary of what that was. And we'll just have to trust that they were honest about that and didn't just brush off Trump's name or Biden or anybody else that's involved. Don't buy it, guys. Everyone senses this is off. Now, weirdly enough, here's what Trump had to say right afterward. I mean, I shouldn't even say weirdly. This is exactly what I expect. Of course, nothing to hide at all, but don't talk about it, is the summary of what he says here.
So I'm for any, I don't, they can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it.
Yeah, totally. That's totally like we haven't been saying this entire time. You can't just make this nonchalant answer like that's obviously what we would do when you've been saying the exact opposite forcefully for months now. This is where I keep drawing this line. You are either too blindly adherent to supporting him or too completely stupid to be able to see this if you're not calling it out. He is absolutely pretending like he was always doing this the whole time, like they do in every other situation. It just happens to me so clumsy, it makes me laugh out loud from what this administration is doing today, because they're the junior team. They're the ones that are not ready for these positions. But either way, the point is, you must know by now that that's not what he was doing the entire time. But now he's acting like it's no big deal.
But don't talk about it too much, because I don't. They can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much, because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us.
What? Don't talk about it too much was a dumb thing to say in the first place, but I don't want to take it away from us. I think what he's trying to say is because we're doing so great, but nobody buys that because we're not, and you're lying about grocery prices and spending, and everybody knows that's the case. So you can't really, nobody, even Republicans are pushing back on that. Robert Barnes was going, you're lying about that. A very, very hardcore supporter of Trump. But yeah, but don't talk about the thing that we're all talking about, because you don't want to take away from what's not actually happening.
It's really a Democrat problem.
Of course it is.
The Democrats were Epstein's friends.
Okay, well, interestingly enough, he was a Democrat, and largely is, if you understand how this all works. And so, yes, in a sense, but that's not true. We can clearly prove that it was both sides of the paradigm. And everyone knows that, guys, because it's all very easy to verify. Not necessarily people who were soliciting sexual child, the sexual blackmail network, but people that were friends with Epstein that went to the island. It's pretty much the entirety of our government and business, by the way, Silicon Valley. I shouldn't say entirety, but, a big bulk of the important, powerful people, you can find an overlap here. So why would he say that? Why would he just make that up? Because he's giving you the talking points.
All of them. And
every Democrat possible, by the way, because
it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. And I don't want to.
How can you keep saying the whole thing is a hoax when you just said the Democrats are there? You see, here's the point. You can argue what he means is what they're doing is a hoax, but there is Epstein stuff. But then you can't be dumb enough to go the whole thing. Those are words that have definitions. And you can't say the whole thing is a hoax and then say, but these are actually Democrats that are involved. And the island's a cesspool.
Take it away from really the whole thing is a hoax. And I don't want to take it away from really the greatness of what the Republican Party has accomplished over the last period of time.
Period of time. You see, he's being very vague because nobody, generally speaking, over a period of time, how great, it's like, that's okay. What are you talking about? In what context? What do you mean? The COVID debacle, the supporting of the shots, the lying of Maha, the complete martial law rollout of our country, the destruction of the Constitution. I mean, maybe because a lot of immigrants were removed, most of which didn't have criminal records, a lot of which were actually here legally, and even some U.S. citizens. But yeah, hashtag winning. It's embarrassing. And this is why it's becoming even more interesting to watch the certain characters we often point to just keep cheerleading for them. When even their own people are going, come on, man. It's like, well, it's very obvious and we all see it, but yay, hashtag winning. It's like reluctant, grudgingly, because they don't want to admit they're wrong. But here is Dan Bongino. Public corruption will not be tolerated. Cool. It's just so funny to yell it on Twitter. What's the point of something like that? You don't do that unless you recognize that people don't think you're doing that. We all recognize that you guys aren't actually being you're not fighting the deep state. Okay. You're not fighting corruption. Maybe not maybe in some cases, lackeys here and there, but not when it really matters, not in the ways you promised. So you come out and go, we're doing the thing that you're saying we're not. Like you just won the argument. I just don't, that's my point. This feels like they don't understand. They're LARPing. That's dumb to me. And every single person in the chat is like, what are you talking about? It's just like laugh my effing ass off. That's what it says right there. Boo. Why are you saying this? At least stay quiet when you absolutely do nothing. Like these are largely Republicans too. So you're resigning? Now, it's just crazy to me. And they sense this. I promise you right now, especially for both of them and Trump too, I think they feel resentment towards the American people, even their own supporters, because they feel like they're not being supported because they don't deserve to be supported. Neither does Biden or the Democrat. Our government has shucked us off. They do not feel responsible for our lives. Not that they should. My point is that they don't care. Their actions they're not considering what will happen to us in their agenda. I believe that. I think history proves that. Just to re-clarify that, my point is not that they should be responsible for us, but the way that they act demonstrates that they have that responsibility, but they don't care. That's the point I was trying to make. But Corruption won't be tolerated. Okay. How's the investigations going? How's the, I mean, I'll get into some of the overlaps in the investigations in a second, or the January 6th conversation. Are you guys looking into that? Or the Israeli rapist that the guy sent back home? Massey simply says, Rokan and I achieved a 427 to 1 vote in the House and 100 to 0 vote in the Senate using a discharge petition, which allows the House to function when the Speaker blocks progress. Now, Speaker Johnson wants to eliminate the discharge petition, but we won't let him. That was 5 hours ago. They're still trying to push back on this despite Trump acting like it's all over. They keep trying to do that where they go, it happened, everybody move forward. And then you get the people we're pointing to that run online and you go, we're done, we won, look forward, look at this, look at Europe, look at the voting, they stole the election, the immigrants, anything, look away from this. And hopes that you just pretend it's over now, like they do with the Epstein conversation. I'll show you a tweet about that next, where the point's like, why are you still talking about Epstein? People that were later going, or before the administration going, Epstein's all that matters. And now they're pushing back because people just follow along. Kyle says, hi, Massey. I've been hearing chatter that the bill allows Bondi to censor anything she sees fit in regard to the file. I wonder if you could speak on this. And Massey responded. He said, if this were true, they wouldn't have fought me tooth and nail. Now, that's just simply not true. It could be true. But to say because they fought me proves that's a fault. That's a, I'll just blank on the term for the, basically, you can't, it could mean that, but you can't prove that's the case because there's 1,000 other reasons they could be pretending to fight for things just like this. But what we just showed you in the actual act makes it very clear. There is at least 6 different reasons they could block whatever they want. Of course, it won't be justified. It won't be accurate, but they absolutely have done it. And of course they will. And so it's a weird response from him, but he's fighting it. That's good to see. Oh, wait, I thought I had that in here. I guess not. I must have removed it. Anyway, there was one, I was commenting on somebody saying that, but basically people going, why are you still talking about the Epstein files? Oh, you know what? It might have been this. Let's see. No, guess not. Sorry. Wasting time. Not that it necessarily matters, but I did mention it. And it's just basically somebody calling him out and saying, why are you still talking about this? Oh, you know what? I'm dumb. It's right here. See how often I do that to myself on the show? Please laugh at me every time I do that. See, what happens is I have things organized and then I decide to do something different in the last half an hour and move things around. And then I already did the thing that I'm thinking I should be doing now, thinking ahead of myself. Please laugh at me. So first we're going to play this clip. And then I'll point to what I was saying here in regard to somebody calling out 5 times August for daring to keep pointing out the Epstein files are not going the way they should. First, Liam says, and this is Liam from, the Mises Institute. Maybe I'm thinking, was he from something else before? Anyway, remind me in the chat if he's from a different platform. I thought he was something else. Thomas Massey, he says, his power play on the Epstein files is the type of action people have demanded of Republicans for decades. I would just simply say demanded from politicians forever. People are tired of Republicans campaigning like Ron Paul and governing like Lindsey Graham. That is such a perfect way to put that. What did they do before they got put in this position? They were going Ron Paul and Thomas Massey and then just pushed them aside because obviously they are not the same people. But they use them like that. What they do is they scream the world to you and then do whatever they want. That's the point. And he goes, Massey planted a flag, coalition with Democrats on an issue the Republicans campaigned on and forced the speaker and the president to do what they campaigned on and received a mandate to do. This is the way. I don't think a Republican has ever done something like this on an issue on this magnitude in my lifetime. Now, I don't disagree, but even if it's exactly how he's framing this and Massey's the best person in the world, we should still be questioning them. I would like to believe Massey would agree with that because he is what he appears to be, that we would demand that we're more critical of him, not in an unjust way, but that we question the actions that are being done and apply the same criticism equally to everybody, but including the person that you believe is doing the right thing. Maybe they get fooled and we're there to stop that, right? That's how that should be. But my point is, I do agree with the sentiment here, but who knows whether there's ulterior motives, maybe, and who knows where this goes next. But to me, I think it's important to recognize that even if he's playing at this to counterbalance how crazy it all is, I still think it's the right thing. I'm just trying to be objective about that. And you know my history about this and why I think politicians, I don't believe government should exist. So it's going to be a hard sell for me to think that these people should deserve your support. But since we're in the state of society that we are, I think it's important to point out people who are demonstrating at the very least what they all pretend they should be doing. Interesting way to think about that, right? So here's what Night Watch Nate posted, and this is just Massey making comments on this.
So many falsehoods about this legislation, but now they're going to vote for it, hopefully enthusiastically. But really, they've been drugged to this. Our judicial system is broken. If it were working, there wouldn't be 1,000 victims who haven't seen justice yet. They are victims of the Epstein class. I begrudge nobody success that they become a billionaire. But if you think being a billionaire or buying politicians keeps you out of the judicial system, lets you rape young women, lets you traffic women, you've got another thing coming when this bill passes. Do not let the Senate muck this up. There have already been efforts to derail this, our discharge petition. The Oversight Committee has released thousands, tens of thousands of documents. That's fine. Keep working. How many names have you released? 0. You are still protecting, or the DOJ is protecting, pedophiles and sex traffickers. The time for that to stop is now. Now, our speaker says, oh, this bill needs amended in the Senate, and specifically, he's trying to create a loophole. He's trying to categorize the pedophiles as victims. He's saying, oh, we don't embarrass the people that went to the rape island. We should protect those names against unreliable accusations. Is he calling all of these victims unreliable? They've testified to the FBI. The FBI has these names in their possession. I asked the FBI director in a hearing, have you looked at the documents? No, he trusts everybody that's been there for decades. That is wrong. Do not let the Senate muck this bill up. And if you're a party to that in the Senate, you are part of this cover-up that we are trying to expose. I am sorry if one of your billionaire donors is going to get embarrassed because he went to Rape Island. That is what they have coming. In fact, they need to be on the other side of bars, a lot of them. Some of them will be embarrassed, but some of them need to go to prison, and the survivors know that. So how will we know if this bill has been successful? We will know when there are men, rich men, in handcuffs being perp-walked to the jail. And until then, this is still a cover-up. I urge my Senate colleagues, do not muck up this bill. The president has already said he will sign it. That means he will sign the bill that we have here today. Do not change this bill. He is ready to sign it. Give it to him. Put it on his desk. Let's get justice for these victims. With that, I reserve.
I'm not going to, I think it's important we question everything, as always. These people especially. But I'm also not going to jump to the conclusion that that this person is absolutely not on our side. I think it behooves us to obviously always, even when it's kind of clearly not the case, just always consider that maybe that is the case. If that makes sense. It's just, you have to consider we may be missing something. My point in saying that is because here we are always trying to fight for these things. All of us. We're trying to fight for change. We're trying to fight for our government to maybe go away, maybe get better, maybe actually respect our rights. And the point is that somebody steps up like Massey and says the things we want to hear. Maybe he believes them. And so many people instantly go, he must be using this to lie to us and trick us, because we're so trained and we're so rightly so on guard to that exact thing. Look at Tulsi Gabbard. Look at a ton of different overlap. Look at Donald Trump. And so what's funny is that I understand completely. I actually feel the same way. Why it's such an instinctive thing to go, that's somebody trying to trick us. But my point in saying all that is that obviously we're doing this for the reason to reach that point. Then to not at least consider that might be happening seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? But I get what people are saying. I agree. There's a lot, the loopholes in the language are, the only way I look at this is that he must have either accepted that as a step in the right direction, but won't just say that today, which is always that, even if you play, playing the game in politics, something I've always disagreed with, not that, but maybe I'm wrong on that. The point is that either that's happening or he's being dishonest about this. And if he continues in this path and keeps fighting for it, I think that will speak to the former, that he just basically took what he could get and got this moving. And if he keeps fighting it, like let's say he goes at this for the next couple of years and just hopefully not that long, hopefully it happens and we get all the release, or he fights it and he pushes even more. I think that would basically speak to the fact that what he was doing here was genuine. But even then, we stand back even larger and go, maybe he was doing that in order to reach convince you to trust him later. And what's funny is even saying that kind of thing, it like exhausts people in politics. Like, God, you're never going to trust anything. You're right. I won't. I'm never going to trust a politician. The fact that you trust any politician is embarrassing, quite frankly, because you should never be trusting or have loyalty to a person in politics. As Theodore Roosevelt says, it's servile. And what is he called? Morally treasonable to the American people to blindly trust a president, regardless of what they say, paraphrasing. And so what's funny is we need to get to that point. But anyway, I digress. It's just such an important conversation, but I share your concern, guys, and I understand why it's there. But we should at least consider and hope, right? While constantly questioning his actions more than anybody. I actually just reached out again on Twitter, sending messages. I would love to get Thomas Massie on the show. Like I said, I will be fair. I want to believe that he's doing the right things, but I'm going to ask tough questions. And I'd like to believe that he would welcome that if he is the person he says he is. And again, I really hope that's the case, man. We need somebody like that. But in regard to Epstein here, just in responses to this, Urban Surf, in response to 5 Times August, who said, remember when Bondi said all the right things and it wasn't all the right things, but it wasn't about Epstein at all. And it was instead about Tesla cars being vandalized. Justice is coming. How dumb was that, by the way? Remember, all it was ultimately, if you look back still, like I told you then, despite, through the fog of partisanship, it's a good term, it was blowing up cars and terrorism. And it was one lot that got, I think it was a Molotov cocktail, one thing that got thrown in, which is a big deal. Like I said, in those instances, those people should go to jail. Those are crimes. But they folded that into some massive thing. Interestingly, a precursor to the all lefties are terrorists. It's been building, guys. It's not on lie after lie after lie, but lies that are built around some fraction of truth. That's how that works. But he simply says, remember when she pretended she cared? And Urban Surf says, now that Trump signed off on the release of the files, what are you going to complain about next? Okay, well, first of all, as we just pointed out, signing off on that does not mean what you pretend it means. Or like when Trump said, the Gaza war's over, and you're all like, we did it, it's over. And it was still happening, like it still is today. Like these people like to just go off what is said. Maybe I think a lot of people don't even realize why that's stupid. But anyway, 5 Times August says perfectly, I guess I'm all done complaining, man. Trump has handled the Epstein situation absolutely flawlessly. And of course, we have every reason to trust what he gets out of this because the government has never lied to us about anything. So, he did so well addressing COVID crimes against humanity. I'm positive the Epstein files see accountability for all those involved as well. Obviously being sarcastic. The point is to see the effort to push back on anybody simply going, well, this is not what we were promised. And all the people out there, I like to point to 5 Times August because there was a line at which his principles, he just said, this is too much. And he didn't say that and then waffle back like Alex Jones in every 30 seconds where he goes, sedition, treasonous, maybe he's not the guy. And then 10 seconds later, it's about how we have to back him or we'll have to save the world by backing Trump. He's lying to you, okay? 5 Times August is clearly, there's a line that's been crossed, and he has been continually saying, okay, at least in his opinion now, they're not what they promised. Because that's what you do when you've got principles. You don't just suddenly think differently. Clearly, there have been lines that have been crossed, and we all see that. White House says, thanks to President Trump's deal-making, these random points around the point of like misleading you or lying to you or ultimately getting people to blindly trust partisanship. He says, thanks to President Trump, or the White House says, his deal-making, we're making fair, I can't read right now for some reason. Thanks to President Trump's deal-making, we're making trade fair again. I kept wanting to say free trade for some reason. And winning big. Coffee, tea, cocoa, spices, bananas, oranges, tomatoes, beef, fertilizer. They're now more exempt from reciprocal tariffs. What would you say to that? It's funny how there's so many people out there that are like, yay! Even people that don't realize what's going on right there. Because they just kind of get excited about whatever they show you as if it's the end. It's like people who believe whatever's in the newspaper, that generation. Well, Justin Mash says, thanks to President Trump for removing the tariffs that President Trump placed on these products. This is what winning looks like. There's really no air in that conversation, guys. He put tariffs on and then he removed them and they're going, we did it. We were cheaper prices, which by the way, then proves to you that tariffs were a tax on you. But like anybody with a brain already knew, it's just funny to me. Yeah, Trump is freeing us from his bogus Liberation Day. Now, this point, I just want to include somewhere, has to do with Tyler Robinson. And you might have seen this. I think the point is about how they're not doing what they promised. And there's a lot of examples to that. This one just needs to be pointed out because I believe there is still some kind of a cover-up happening around this. And I don't believe it's a left versus right dynamic, just like none of this seems to be to me. But the information, the image, rather the videos of Tyler Robinson supposedly going to the police station doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't that feel familiar? And on top of that, remember the whole point on this. He had never admitted to doing this. We're told that his family were the ones that said that. They said he was there, and when he got arrested, and then when he was there, he said he wasn't guilty. And there's never been a plea, there's never been anything. People are now going, does he even exist? I mean, these are very logical things to be asking with how this is going. But whether or not you go to the extent of maybe he's not even real, clearly, this is not even close to being definitive at this point, on top of the fact that he's never even claimed he did this. He could be manipulated by the family around him. This could all be a complete lie. It could be any number of things. But the fact that we don't have information and neither Bongino or Cash Patel or Trump or any of them are even caring about that, when it comes after using Charlie Kirk the way that they did so dishonestly, censoring people using his name, this is wild to me. So he says, regarding the missing Tyler Robinson footage, according to my research and reading the Washington County Sheriff's Office policy manual, there is no reference to a 30-day video retention policy. They claim that's why it was deleted. James Lee doing his background work and finding out they don't even have that policy. Here's what Candace Owens says. Here's the article to it, by the way. You honestly cannot make this up. Footage of Tyler Robinson turning himself into police does not exist. The footage simply does not exist anymore, or maybe it never existed in the first place. You decide. Pretty wild, isn't it?
Another installment in the Charlie Kirk assassination cover-up. Watch this shenanigans.
I know who Charlie Kirk's shooter is.
On September 17th, 2025, Washington County Sheriff Nate Brooksby held a press conference.
Our job was not to interview, our job was just to get him here.
After Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter was taken into custody in Washington County less than 2 days after the shooting.
Within the hour, my friend drove Tyler and his parents to my office, where he was greeted by plainclothes detectives.
After learning of this, I submitted a public records request to obtain any video of Tyler Robinson walking into the jail facility. Washington County responded saying there were no records responsive to the request, as Robinson did not go to the jail area. Our request for any holding room video was denied. A few weeks later, I re-upped the request on a more generalized scale for surveillance video showing Tyler Robinson walking into the sheriff's office.
Very quickly, think about the first argument. Well, he didn't go into the jail, so it doesn't exist. Now, that combined with the last argument, to me, sounds like they're just the next excuse they can use, right? So first was he didn't go in the jail.
For the state of Utah, we would certainly hope that this video is available.
The response? Our office does not have any applicable records responsive to this request, as the surveillance footage is no longer available after the 30-day retention period.
Okay, so before he gives you the point where he does the research and finds that's not their policy, which you could always argue that maybe they don't have it posted, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they'll make an argument. But I think James Lee found something important. Just the idea is simply that if you said that he didn't go in the jail, that's not why it's not there, and then they ask for the larger part of it, and you simply go, it's been deleted, to me, that screams the first argument was not valid in the first place. Otherwise, they would have started with, I guess because when they were asking, it was the same time frame. But the point simply is that it's not there today. And that nobody seems to care about that. And all the people that have been, it seems that Republicans more than anybody are, which is interesting and speaks volumes, care about this being shown. And I want to see something of this person, of him speaking, of their conversation about what he actually says, about whether he was involved. Why wouldn't that matter? Now here's what he said about the research.
I actually went and looked some of this stuff up, and according to the Washington County Sheriff's policy manual, they don't have a 30-day retention policy.
What?
Yeah, and this seems to be a repeating pattern, a repeating theme with this whole case, is that every time they give us more information, it seems like it just unveils a whole new set of pieces that don't make any sense at all.
Remember, Tyler Robinson never even confessed or pled guilty.
He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating.
It's not important that he never confessed, but what is important here is that his boyfriend is transgender.
And again, remember, no way has that been verified. I don't even know if there's from my research, that's not been stated outside of the assumption that because he lived with this person, even that, I mean, to be quite fair, I haven't then proved that was the case either. I don't think anybody has seen some kind of a verifiable document, which I wouldn't even go that far, to be honest, outside of all the other lies, but maybe we should find out whether he was actually living in that house. But the point is that just because you live in that house does not therefore mean that you're dating that person. There's a lot of assumptions that were made, including the earliest argument. First, it was that guy in the blue shirt. We knew it. He's a lefty. And then it wasn't him. And they just carried the narrative until they got the next guy, very, very obvious. And then it was not even close to being definitive. MAGA family, left-leaning points that you could argue, but even though the point was always here, right? Republicans wore masks. Republicans are clear. I mean, I always make the joking point about Alex Jones and the transgender overlap. Clearly you can't keep saying that there's any connection, therefore means Blair White, for example, that means that they're a lefty. That just is simply not accurate. But overall, the fact that there's no video now in general, and if we continue to go in this direction, it just drifts into the background. Well, the obvious, guys. I mean, we must at this point recognize that there's a lot more. I mean, at this point, with what has been given to us, any detective worth their salt would be looking directly in the direction of Israel or some kind of a Zionist coalition in this country. I mean, that's not a hyperbolic point. That's not rooted in some kind of racism. It's just where the facts point. And this was our first discussion on September 12th. Just let's look at the facts around whether Israel was involved. And then Carrie Wedler did a great article about this in regard to just how this will be used going forward. And we're going to get to, if we have time, the Muslim Brotherhood censorship overlap today. And this relates to the same point. But it's the Charlie Kirk hysteria is a blueprint for future political chaos. It's both censorship and just political divide and conquer, right? But just really important to think about where this goes. Now, here's Sun Tzu, in really just almost in a what's the right word? Slight to the name, Sun Tzu. The guy who literally is blind partisan supporting. He either doesn't understand the book or definitely it's just, it's typical. It's like using, we're the patriots and then literally doing things unpatriotic. But he says, patriots, I'm tired. I feel tired like the rest of you. It says, I've been saying this for a while, but this is our 1776. Seriously. We are in a psychological and informational war that is unprecedented. We must keep fighting. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know where I will stand at the end of the day. I stand for the U.S. and I stand for President Trump. Well, you lost it all right there. Not because it's Trump, but because when you are going, I stand with that one individual. Sun Tzu's not capable of considering that maybe Trump is deceiving you, that maybe you are misguided or deceived about what he actually feels. Maybe Trump believes everything he's actually saying, and he's the one being played. I'm sure Sun Tzu could figure out that multi-layered manipulation, right? But said there's so many voices that are trying to take us down and deceive us. Don't fall for it. Trust yourself. Well, okay. Of course, it's possible that what I'm seeing is wrong and that Trump is saving the day. Well, that's what they say the last administration. How did that end up? Well, brought you right into the COVID-19 lockdown. Okay, so that didn't work out. He didn't save us from anything. Well, it was just given more time. I don't know how much more trust the plan we can get from people who pretend that they're deeper or more cognitive than what we're talking about. Sun Tzu, it just kills me. But this person says, question everything that you're told, and shows Thomas Massie with an A under the Liberty score and Lindsey Graham with an F. Or you look at the actual adherence to the Republican Party line, Massie has a higher vote than almost any of them, but yet they call him the traitor. These people are blind partisan followers. Now, in that very part of the conversation, right? That's what we have in ICE to some degree, or any category. People that are partisan. They exist anywhere. They're human beings, right? So you have people that are in politics, you have people that are in police stations, people in the doctor's office who have a motivation driven from something other than what's right, than what's accurate, than what's medically correct. In some cases, we know look, we saw it during COVID, both left and right, by the way. So the main part for this overlaps for me today with ICE and the rapid decline of the acknowledgement of your inherent God-given constitutional rights. So when Trump calls them traitors, seditious, for simply pointing out the obvious, that it is legal for you to resist unlawful orders, it overlaps in a really interesting way right now. Now, obviously, you understand why they might push back, whether any of the rest of this was around the conversation, because it is a useful tool to say, look at them. They're trying to say, don't trust, ignore military orders, which is not what they said. And so then you get the blind followers who don't listen to what they said and just listen to what Trump said they said and go, they're calling for treason or insurrection. And then they get this momentum going, and people don't even look anymore. They just follow their sides. By the way, isn't that exactly what Congress does? As we've been told 100 times over, that they just go party line, party line. Yes, it's the same exact idea. So this comes down to, I'll play the clip, basically pointing out the obvious. Now, look, I won't ignore the possibility that the lefts are doing this, people on the left side of the paradigm are doing this for, an effort to convince people to ignore military orders. But that's not what they said. And so now we're back to the same point that they're going, wink, this is what they wink, are actually saying, oh, okay, so now what you're doing is when they say freedom, what they mean is terrorism. Okay. When Ryan says, I don't know, the point is they could make anything mean anything. If what they're trying to say is by saying the exact legal reality actually means do the opposite. Well, guys, they say Palestinian flags mean you support terrorism from the, whatever. The point is anything becomes anything. Domestic terrorism, crimes. We all know how this works today. They can deem you a criminal. At this point, I just saw you can end up in El Salvador before people even figure out what's going on. Maybe not as much right now, but they've been building this whole thing. So let's start with the clip, just to show you right out of the gate what was actually said. And I'm of the mind that both left and right, the politicians in general, are weaselly manipulative people. I mean, I think that's what these positions are. As Bruce Fein would say the same thing. Comes from the Reagan administration. He thinks literally every politician in existence has an ulterior motive. I think that's provable. So just recognize that this is about what will amount to the destruction of what we hold dear in this country. Not taking a side, just acknowledging the facts, the truth, and the historical precedent, and then watching as they use all of it to, whether it's with good intention or not, drive you to a place where those things no longer exist.
Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris Deluzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
Like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
So right now, most people online are claiming that's not what they really said. At least the ones in the larger, like the typical ones we point to. They're out there going, but that's not what they actually said. But it is, though.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
or our Constitution.
We know this is hard
and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
Isn't it interesting that basically everyone in Congress, in government, they all seem to be military and intelligence? It's not an accident, guys. Back in the day, it used to be average Americans who saw it as a public service to stand up for their rights. Not today. It's basically one big circle, the Gru term. It is one big insider circle, like it's a revolving door of our own system. I mean, we have to acknowledge that by now. I mean, intelligence alone is concerning. But when you recognize that it's, these are people that have been driven through the machine and adhere to it. You think they don't go when they go through like a boot camp scenario, but much, much more of that. I think it's worth pointing out. And it's not every single one of them, but it's pretty damn close.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans.
That they only care about because it's being used right now against the other side. If they were the ones doing it, they wouldn't be saying this. That's my belief.
Give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
All right. So the point, obviously, you can ignore an unlawful order. It's cut and dry. Very simple. So here's what the article says. President Trump called a group of Democrats traitors on Thursday and suggested they be locked up and punished by death. Now, I'll show you the framing. I mean, you can see, here's a good example of what you could argue, I mean, I'll just show you really quickly, is something like this: seditious behavior, punishable by death. Now, that's also an accurate statement. It can be, but typically only in wartime. But regardless, you could argue he's just pointing out but see, what he's saying is that it is seditious behavior, which is incorrect. But then saying that would be punishable by death. So you could argue that he's incorrect about whether it's seditious behavior, but I think the point is obvious. He's suggesting that, so he says that is what they're doing, which could be punishable by death. So in a way, he is essentially threatening that. But to be objectively fair, he's saying you could pretend he thinks it's sedition, and so he's saying what is accurate. But the point overall, where's this here, is that you could argue that the Hill is sort of misrepresenting that to claim that Trump said they suggest to be locked up and punished by death, basically saying you should put them to death, which is not what he said necessarily. It's a small nuance, but I think it's worth pointing out on both sides. People will read the Hill and go, Trump said they should kill him, and that's not necessarily what happened. I think it is in our interest today to be that specific and to be that objective. It goes, after the lawmakers urged members of the military to resist unlawful orders by the administration. Now, even then, you could argue that's not necessarily that it was this, but just you have the right to do that. And it says Trump was responding to a video made by 6 Democrats with military intelligence backgrounds that directly addresses active service members and says, our laws are clear, you can refuse illegal orders. Trump and other top administration officials seized in the video to claim the lawmakers involved were undermining the government. I mean, how can you say that? Unless your point is that you are giving unlawful orders and they're telling you not to follow those. Because actually that's exactly what's happening. Not that the Democrats are being honest. I think they're all part of some larger manipulation if you really break it down. But that is technically what's happening here in regard to the fact that they're saying you can do the thing which is legal, which it is. And so Trump saying what he's saying suggests that he knows what they're doing is illegal, which again, it verifiably is. He says, this is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Oh, wow. So you can't even say that out loud, even though it's correct? See, now you're crossing into free speech. And it says seditious behavior from traitors, all capitals. Lock them up, Trump posted on Truth Social. So he did call for them to be arrested and did very clearly call them traitors. So this is the same point from Obama. Guys, you realize traitor is a specific fine. Like that's a legal term. If traitor, then you're accusing them of a crime. Sedition, you could claim is more nuanced to a degree, right? You could be accused of sedition. There could be more. But when you're calling somebody a traitor, I mean, that's crazy. So the point they made about Obama was, okay, I think it was 5 times August again. How many times can you call him a traitor and then have nothing follow up? If you knew he was a traitor, I mean, I also ask, why wouldn't Obama sue him for slander or libel? Because I don't think that I think all of this is a larger play. Because you're literally telling the world that he broke the law, even though we know Obama did. I mean, that's kind of why at the end of the day anyway, because they're all criminals and they all know that. Lock them up is a big deal. And of course, question mark, lock them up, 3 question marks. So he didn't really do it. It's just so ridiculous. Calling for people to be arrested for pointing out the obvious is insane. But you realize all of this amounts to the slow degradation of all of these things for us, not for them, as somebody pointed out in the chat a moment ago. It's a theater, the show back and forth to amount to restricting us, not them. He later posted a message that said, seditious behavior punishable by death. The president also posted several messages on the social media platform from users attacking the lawmakers involved in the video, including one user who wrote, hang them, George Washington would, that Trump shared. So you guys, you can't pretend this is not obvious when he's literally sharing something when people are calling for them to hang a sitting member of Congress. That's it. That is so far over the top. But see, this is why they come back around. They go, well, he wasn't, like in January 6th, I argue there was a lot of stuff that was wildly taken out of context. But you could make examples that were much more subtle back then where he did nudge things that would go against what he was claiming, but it wasn't as specific as they said then. This is exactly specific. This is him sharing that, saying they're being seditious, calling them traitors. So, hypothetically speaking, if somebody were to go out and execute that traitor, would Trump be responsible? Well, by my logic, no. But from individual standpoint, because the point is, again, the law, the legal reality, in my mind, if we're going to be hard to principles, would be whoever committed the crime. But the world should be like, let's take a personal stance. I would argue Trump was responsible for that from my perspective. And I would argue that anybody, including the family, could sue him and probably win. But again, free speech and the crime was committed. This may be hard for many people to wrap their mind around, but its extreme examples always make it difficult to make that rational choice. And maybe you disagree. Maybe I'm wrong. The point overall is they were just screaming that using the word fascism is the reason Charlie Kirk was killed, as they use him dishonestly. And now you're literally calling them traitors and sedition and hang them? Come on. And neither side should be accountable for the actions of random people who look at their words and act. But you have to hold them on equal ground here. And so if you're going to pretend that, then what they're doing is so shockingly hypocritical. And if you're going to go by their laws, illegal. But not laws, rather, but they're standing. But we shouldn't, because all it will amount to, that's what I was trying to say before, is them making that case and then using it against you, not against the politicians who do it. That's so they can go, Ryan said that word. That's why that thing happened. Now you're in jail. That's what this leads to. Now it says, quote, what is the reason for saying what they said? And this gets into the wink, wink point, right? Where they're like, this is what they meant, which is just, again, to extend that out. So you can say free Palestine, and they say that means kill every Jew in the world. That's what these things are doing. What's the reason for them saying that? He said, except for to encourage members of our military, to encourage members of our intelligence community to defy direct command from their superior. And that is wrong. Well, of course, you left out the part where they said illegal order. And if it was an illegal order, well, they would be legally allowed to say no. So you see, they're trapping themselves. And they know that it's just I think it's about a divide and conquer point. So I make this point, the other side makes the other point, and we fight. And meanwhile, the whole thing keeps going. But it's still worth pointing out because it is being used. And it says at one point, Sean Hannity displayed the Insurrection Act. Seriously, which bars anyone who engages in a rebellion from holding public office. So now you're insinuating they should be removed from office, which is what they're calling for. Blanche stopped short of suggesting the lawmakers violated that statute because they didn't. And it says, but said any probe, quote, would absolutely be what their intent was in saying this. I mean, always intent's the most difficult part to prove, but it doesn't matter. If you're literally saying, if I came out and said it is legal for you, what's the best way to say that? Like if something like this, if I said something was, it's legal for you, like if a cop, okay, here's a crazy example, but let's say it is legal, by the way, if somebody kicks in your front door, doesn't identify themselves, and you shoot them and it turns out to be a cop, that's their responsibility. You didn't commit a crime. That's easy to look up, and it's very roundly held. It's people push back, and there's different states that make it more difficult, but in many cases it's been roundly upheld. Because how do you know? If they don't identify themselves, my point is, if that happened and somebody said it is legal for you to do that in that circumstance, that does not then make, where were we, the intent for you to then go do it without that being the case. Like it's insane to argue that by them saying you can disregard an unlawful order, that they are nudging them to violate lawful orders. That doesn't make any sense. And they will push that. But so that's my point in the larger sense, is you're allowed to point out what the law is. That doesn't change what people can do. You get the point. And Stephen Miller and the rest of them are pushing this so hard. I feel like it's worth just making sure that I think where this goes is going to get very dark. I think there's people like Miller are pushing this to an extreme degree. And then when people act out irrationally, they're going to blame that on some other dynamic. And it says, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller decried the comments from Democrats as insurrection plainly, directly. Except it literally wasn't, because you're pointing to a legal reality. But this is Stephen Miller, somebody who's out there actively fighting for things that benefit a foreign country. So it shouldn't surprise you. But again, to reiterate, the idea being in a legal, there's very difficult situations. In this case, somebody who's in the military who gets ordered to do something that they know is illegal. That's a very difficult circumstance, because today, I mean, maybe you'll win out at the end. Maybe you'll end up proving that it was illegal. But you know how difficult that is? Just like at a police station, most in the military will probably be angry with you for even pushing that case, even when you're right. I know plenty of military, and there's a common thread there. And it's the same in the police stations, right? Where let's just say a police officer got caught breaking the law and you call him out as an officer. Most officers hate you for that, even though the guy broke the law. So my point is, even though it's the legal reality, it's unlikely that even if you're in the position that saying no to an order will work out in your favor. And they know that. So this is kind of how this is all being pushed. But it overall, there's an important overlap to this. Actually, hold on. I was going to jump into an overlap. We'll come back to it. I'll show you these tweets first, and we'll come back to the overlap that will really bring this together in an interesting way. But Justin Amash simply says, obviously, Posting that members of Congress or anyone should be killed for advising service members to refuse unlawful orders is unequivocally deranged behavior. We, the people, must stop tolerating the sort of lunacy from the presidency, or we will lose our society. Now, he can say what he wants. He has the right to free speech. But we as a society, or as Congress, for example, can impeach him for doing something that is completely contradictory to the foundational principles of this country. And I argue Obama, Biden, Bush, you could make the same point for all of them. But we're here now, and this is what we're dealing with. I made the same argument for Biden. I argued Biden shouldn't have been in the position. But the point is, people will go, well, we didn't do it then. It's not a team sport game, guys. You got to get outside of that mentality. Now here is, this was the clip. We played that clip. Here is Rapid Response 47 playing what basically Donald Trump, or the discussion about him in this context. And it says, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble, POTUS says.
You look at sedition, if you look at, that type of, that's a very strong form of being a traitor. That's a terrible thing to say. I must tell you, I heard it, and I thought it was some kind of a comedy situation. I thought it was some kind of a skit, and because I couldn't believe that they'd say it. And I watched Democrat congressman and one Democrat senator yesterday on one of the shows, didn't even want to discuss it. They said, whoa, don't get me into that one. They don't want to get into it. That is
because people know how aggressively vitriolic you are, and you will go after literally anybody, no matter whether they're saying the right thing or not, like you're doing. That seems pretty clear, but he already said sedition yet again. I mean, I'm at the point where I mean, it's kind of both. Like, I feel like I think this is part of a manipulation, but at the same time, I start to wonder in general whether he even truly understands the Constitution. He seems in many ways to just dig in positions that are even not necessary for his agenda, but that literally show you that he, like whether it's the American flag burning or censoring the internet or any number of overlapping points or anti-Semitism. These people do not believe in the foundational principles, or he doesn't even understand them. Why would you be baffled about this sentiment?
Really serious charge. I'll tell you what they said is, and it was, I mean, I don't know about the modern day things, because, modern day is a lot softer, but in the old days, if you said a thing like that, that was punishable by death.
No, not true. Not even then, because the reality was you were always legally allowed to disregard an unlawful order.
Yeah.
Well, there's nuance to the history, but the bottom line, the reality of the legality, I mean, the Constitution, I mean, all these things. This has been something like what they're doing today in about 1,000 different ways is trying to drive us further away from the basic principles. And that's why I'm talking about erring aggressively on that side, even in ways that feel almost uncomfortable. Because if we allow them to give you like a fire in the theater logic that slowly extends and pulls you away from the main stance, you look back in a couple of, like in that very point, you look back over a decade and go, wow, now we're being told we can't say this and think that, and everything's hate speech. Both sides.
But you're not threatening them. A lot of people are interpreting there's a threat and there's security.
Well, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble, I would say.
You gotta love that. I'm not threatening them, but they're in serious trouble. By who? The local principal? Who are you talking about? There's only one person. I love how he always frames himself as sort of like not involved in everything that's happening. It just cracks me up. You're the one we're talking about. You're the one that can do something. So at the end of the day, you are threatening them. And then you play it both ways. He says no, so the followers online say, no, he didn't, because he said so. Because they never lie, apparently.
They're in serious trouble. I'm not threatening death, but I think they're in serious trouble. In the old days, it was death.
Do you worry, Mr. President?
Seditious behavior.
Do you worry
that was a big deal?
Do you worry
that, nothing's a big deal. Today's a different world, okay? It's a softer mic.
And that's how you do it. Today, the Democrats are weak soy boys. So everything we say next is what we should all find. It's just lazy. And you're literally aiming at the lowest common denominator, the dumbest, most complete, the people in the room that are out there going, yeah, I'm a big, tough man, because they don't understand that what they're doing is being made fun of. The toughest person in the room is not the one that has to pound their chest and, do everything they can to outwardly show how tough they are. That's usually the weakest person in the room.
It's a meeker, milder world. But I will say this. I think what they did is really bad. The hatred is pretty strong. But what
the hatred for saying that you should disregard an unlawful order? No, he's just talking about how Democrats are terrorists and they hate everybody, that they do in every single conversation, except at the same time acting like, but here he is going and meeting with Democrats and having conversations and working towards Paul, which he is. There's plenty of examples. or work with Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and all the Silicon Valley, but then at the same time, they're all terrorists and they're all Democrat haters. You're being made fun of, every one of you out there who believes what he's telling you.
When they say, essentially don't follow the orders of the president of the United States.
Not even close to what they said. And you all know that. And if right now, people out there who are going along with that, you are being made fun of. He knows that's not what they said. And if he doesn't, then that's even crazier than the first place.
States?
So
to the military?
Do you worry that some of your guys are going to say no?
Young privates and young corporals and young sergeants, and they're not scholars necessarily. There might be a few, frankly, but they're not.
He has such a negative view about most of you out there, and it always drips through.
Scholars, they don't, study the Constitution.
How about the point about bringing talent in with Megyn Kelly? And he goes, no, we don't, not here, no. There's really no misunderstanding that, but they all chose to ignore it.
Et cetera. They know that. So these are bad people. These are people that, in my opinion, broke the law. Now, what happens to them, I can't tell you.
Oh, why is that? So you're telling me you're going to go after people who broke the law and and your mandate, I can do what I want in Article 2, except here you're claiming you know that, but it's not I don't know, I'm not the one. This is just so dumb. Like, at some point in history, someone's going to look back and make like a book about how completely childishly stupid this is. And it's dishonesty's always been there, but it's the clumsy nature about the way. And I think it's because he somehow sees himself as being so crafty. And in some ways he is, but does he even recognize that he's just being contradictory? He's literally contradicting his own points in one conversation. No, probably not.
But they broke the law. That is a terrible statement. I can say if I ever said that and there were a Democrat as president, all hell would have broken loose.
Probably because they all are dishonest. They probably use it the same way in reverse because they're all the same thing.
Has broken loose. I have had more calls from people, even Democrats, saying what a horrible thing that was.
Oh, like he does every time, right? Which usually is not true. Everyone's calling me saying, I don't want to do the thing that the Democrats are doing, but or I got deals from every person in the world telling me, just get into power, please, Trump, give me the deal. And then none of it actually happened because none of it was actually real. I mean, the idea that you always make this case that it's secretly all on your side, all he's trying to do is use the most like basic, juvenile, or simplistic. Everyone believes me, so you should believe me. Oh, okay. If everyone does, then I'm not going to be the one that doesn't. I'm going to be a follower like everybody else. That's who he thinks you are. I don't believe that's most people. He says, Justin, it's plainly not a crime to state that members of the armed forces are responsible or have a responsibility to refuse unlawful orders, such as the congressionally unauthorized strikes on boats, for example, are unlawful. These statements are 100% protected by the First Amendment. And not only is he saying that's not true, he's saying you should be arrested for doing that. There's never been a president, maybe by accident, maybe because he's clumsy, but however you look at it, who is more directly like stating challenges to the immediacy of the constitutional reality. Now, that's not the same as saying they're not violating it the same way behind the scenes. Trump is just coming out and making it common conversation. That's alarming to me. Now, let's talk about the overlap to this. It's not hard to understand. I shouldn't even need to prove this to you, but here's simply, this is the law office of Peter. It's a lawyer office simply pointing out, it has to do with military. Article 92 of the UCMJ, defenses to Article 92, and it's simply about the unlawful orders aspect. And it's simply saying the whole section is duty defined in the military. Duties in the military are clearly defined. Service members are trained exclusively. Where was it? Simply saying Article 92 charge must be based on a lawful order or regulation. Oh, the whole thing is simply code of conduct and what happens if you disobey an order. And so the point is down here under 92, Article 92, it's simply saying that the order was unlawful is one of the reasons you can disregard it. Very simple. I'll show you in a couple of examples. Here's the actual directly from the manual, the Court-Martialed United States manual, Manual 4, Court-Martialed United States. There's many examples in this, but the main ones stem from this, and this is regard to willfully disobeying superior command officers or lawful orders. But then it makes the point to simply say, starting from the bottom, an order requiring the performance of a military duty or act may be inferred to be lawful, and it is disobeyed at the peril of the subordinate. This interference does not apply to a patently illegal order, such as one that directs the commission of a crime. Now, that's what I was saying before, is that in the kind of air of the military, you ask any of them, is that you mean, how should you say this? That it's not your place as anybody but leadership to decide whether it's unlawful. That's the reality. And if you push back, I mean, my God, you will be punished for that. And the likelihood that you will ultimately prove that this is highly unlikely to me, but from my experience and what I've researched. So there's an air of accepting that even if you know it is, that you're not even the one that's supposed to point that out. That's for them to decide, but they're the ones giving you the unlawful orders. So it's been built this way for a reason. But nonetheless, it's important to understand that they have it written in that this is something you're allowed to disregard. And the other example, an act performed pursuant to a lawful order is justified. That is, an act performed pursuant to an unlawful order is excused unless the accused knew it to be unlawful. So what that means is if you, and this is another reason why most of them just do what they're told, is if you act it out, and you could just say, oh, I had no idea. But if you can later prove that you knew it was unlawful, which you can for things that are patently illegal, then you may be held accountable for it. So it creates an obviously problematic situation for a private to have to decide for themselves when our military does illegal things every 30 seconds. Interesting. Now, DC Drano and tons of other people came out and said, President Trump has called for Democrat leaders to be arrested. It's sedition, pure and simple. Again, the patriots who seem to not understand the Constitution. How embarrassing for you, DC Drano, and all the rest. But see, you know, he doesn't care. None of the rest of them care about any of the things they claim to care about, or they're just that stupid. You can decide because they constantly cheerlead for whatever's being said, even though it contradicts what they 30 seconds ago told you was going to be happening. Isn't he the one that held up one of those binders? Yes, he was. Most transparent administration in history. And here he is going, Epstein, get over it. Clowns. Cat turd. It's 100% sedition. This can't be allowed to stand. Arrest every traitor Democrat who made the video, which is not going to happen. I mean, if it does, that's going to be a gigantic leap in a very dangerous direction, which I don't think they're ready for. It's going to be built like everything else. Nothing will happen. It's my opinion. And then they'll be left going, we're winning somehow, even though nobody's been arrested. Not one. Not one. Think about that, guys. Now, here is Congressman Brian Donald showing the video saying sitting members of Congress are openly calling for military defiance. They're just not. It's such a simple thing to discuss. You could watch the video for yourself. And they're lying. Unconstitutional. So this sitting member of Congress doesn't understand the Constitution. But this is Donald's. You know him. He's a blind Zionist supporting manipulator like all the rest. Nancy Mace. No surprise there. President Trump is the duly elected commander-in-chief. This ongoing seditious conspiracy to undermine. Insane. Now, here's the point I was making earlier. Here's an interesting overlap for you to consider. 2023, August 2nd, I sat down with Brad Miller, and we discussed, as the commander of the 101st Airborne Battalion, how he chose to disregard an order, which was to take a vaccine, right? We talked about this. That's actually why they're getting all these cases today, because they were ordered to do it, and that was under Donald Trump. So the point was, that was refusing an unlawful order, right? Well, yes, of course it was. And so he stepped back, he lost his job for it, and he has stood by that ever since. And he has been proven right in 1,000 different ways. My point in showing you this is, here's an example of why it's important, in not just personal autonomy, but 1,000 other reasons for you to disregard an illegal order, whether personally or in a collective sense. Here's what's even more interesting. Only 43 of more than 8,000 who were discharged from U.S. military for refusing COVID vaccines have rejoined, and how the U.S. government's discussing the reinstatement of service members who refused the COVID vaccination. And you know what that shows you? Well, that they're okay with you disregarding a lawful order or an unlawful order when they agree with it. Pretty simple, right? So what that ultimately shows you is this very small example, or I should have called it a small example, but it's an older one, not even that old, but the point is it clearly shows you that there is an unlawful order that was given and they resisted it. They were called criminals. They were fired. And then Trump came back in, and it was Trump, and said, well, no, they're going to reinstate them, or okay. So that means that there is an example where you're able to disregard an unlawful order. So just recognize that what they're doing right now is trying to play the game with the words. But even if they want to push it, they have already acknowledged this is the case. They all know this. You already understand by now that they don't care. It's all about narratives and all about control. They know what they're doing. And another example of this that is very relevant is the idea that what just happened with the National Guard ruling in DC, which was illegal. So exactly why that's important, because all these people are now being ordered to conduct criminal acts. Now, if they continue to do it regardless of the ruling, which they do with everything else, it'll bring an important conversation up, won't it? And then when they say you're arrested for ignoring military orders, well, it becomes very relevant why this conversation came up. But I kind of doubt that's what's going to happen. I feel like this is more about putting us in a certain place than them actually fighting each other. But let's go over this first. And I think this is very relevant. And then we're going to go over some of the worst examples, and I mean like the most dark, torturous examples that I've ever seen in the ICE conversation. One that just sat with me that I mean, we'll get to it in a second. Judge rules Trump's DC National Guard deployment was illegal, which, by the way, therefore means, which I'm sure will have to go to other courts, so too was the rest of it. Now, there's a nuance, by the way, between DC, which is not technically a state, and then other states, and how that works. I'm guaranteed that will add more to the conversation, and maybe they'll rule differently. But if the argument comes down to the justification, then all the rest are illegal too. And for crying out loud, we know this already because we talked about it in the first place. This is deployment of the military. They deployed the Marines, guys, in multiple states, and they crossed state line. You have to understand that there's no way around this. And the reason on top of it that this was ruled down is because they're calling out Trump's broad Article 2 power. Because anybody with a brain knows that's absurd to claim that gives you the power to do whatever you want. That means that nothing's ever made any sense. The bottom line is that this then undermines everything they're doing in this conversation. And really does show you that if he doesn't have, which we know he doesn't, absolute plenary power that Stephen Miller points out, that's straight from the Nazi handbook. The idea being that means what he did was a violation of posse comitatus. It's a posse, right? That is riled up by, it's meant to be basically an unlawful posse, guys. And that's what they're doing. So here's the article. It says, and this was yesterday, a federal judge ruled Thursday that President Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard troops to D.C. was illegal. That has to matter. I mean, at the end of the day, even if they think it's a radical leftist judge, which, by the way, there's been just as many Republicans ruling against them this entire time, it still is a ruling, and it still stands. But I'm willing to bet you right now that they don't care. It says, concluding, he lacks authority to send in troops for the deference of crime. Now that I guarantee is going to make him livid. I don't have the authority. I bet you he's freaking out right now, probably doubling down in Washington, D.C. just because of that statement. But it comes down to the deterrence of a crime. That's what they're claiming. Whether it's radical leftists, which ultimately, even though King's Day showed you that wasn't even the reality, but overall, the point of immigration or Tren de Aragua or whatever, MS-13, or whatever random narrative they want to point to, claiming that it's there to stop things. Well, that's not how that works. U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb said that while Trump may be the commander-in-chief of the Guard, his power is constrained by federal laws, yes, that limit how those troops can be federalized and deployed, particularly in Washington, D.C., which is controlled by Congress. Yes, exactly like we told you. But so I actually argue that if the same logic applies, it's even more obvious why it couldn't be elsewhere. But it says the court rejects defendants' flyby assertion of constitutional power, finding that such a broad reading of the president's Article 2 authority would erase Congress's role, obviously, in governing the district and its National Guard. That was what Cobb wrote in the ruling. So the point is just to recognize they ruled that it was illegal, like most people with a brain and understanding of the Constitution were arguing. And also show you that what they're claiming, as we'll get into in a minute, are mostly lies to back up why it was needed in the first place. Whether it's the lies around the people they sent to El Salvador, which you can prove today like we did back then, lies about Garcia, lies about Khalil and Ozturk, and every part of this, or the thousands of horrifying stories of U.S. citizens being beaten up and detained and threatened. It's right on the surface. And I argue that most people know this too. Well, let's get into that. First, as we already know, we already reported this, but there's an article now from ProPublica following up on this. The building in Chicago, they claim was all Tren de Aragua, or by the way, parallel this with the lies they were spinning about the place in Aurora. Not that there weren't gangs, but the claim of the building being taken over by remember that big push before all this? And it was rooted in lies? Yeah, there's a reason for these things. And who shared it? Musk and Nick Sorter and all the rest of those same people. So they zip lined in the middle of the night, flashbangs in children's bedrooms. All this is real. And they said it was all these terrorists. What'd they say? They arrested 30, 40 people, all Tren de Aragua. And then it came back to, one of them only one had a link. And remember, they said 3 hops away is okay for them. A link to Nicaragua. But then guess what? Not one person was charged with a crime. Not one. So they violate the rights of every U.S. citizen in this building, or really everybody that was there. They violate their privacy. Multiple constitutional violations. They throw flashbangs and are violent and arrest people. Not charged with a crime. Nobody? That one story should be enough for you to say this is wrong. It says the U.S. I'm not going to get into this in depth. You can read it for yourself. We already talked about this. But interestingly enough, they follow up with an update. So the title is, I Lost Everything. Venezuelans were rounded up in a dramatic midnight raid, but never charged with a crime. They were all let go. They follow up and say the U.S. Department of Homeland Security acknowledged in a recent court filing that 4 of the men arrested in the raid are considered a low public safety risk. So none of them charged with a crime. Some of them are being held in detention for immigration. None of them were charged with a crime. Okay. And it says they are, and what they're saying is there's a risk though. They are among hundreds of immigrants who a district court judge said may have been improperly arrested throughout Chicago in recent months. That judge ordered that they be released on bond, but a federal appeals court paused that order Thursday and set a hearing in December. That means the immigrants won't be released and could still be deported. Okay, so people who have not been charged with a crime are going to sit in the jail cell until December. And not even, realize most of these people were not even illegal immigrants. We've talked about the overlap to this. We're talking about people. This is such a broken conversation. It is disgusting for anybody to pretend like this is in line with anything we believe in this country, other than the radical mindset of the partisanship today, which, by the way, overlaps with both sides of the paradigm in different ways. The immigration part of it, very clearly on the right. But all of them lead to the same point. So let me show you some of these horrifying stories. One is what we've already talked about. The U.S. veteran who was arrested, and this is we've talked about this 3 times actually. We told you in the very beginning, he was unjustly arrested. He was a U.S. citizen. They disregarded that. They beat him up. They bashed his window. They arrested him. They held him for a week, despite the fact that he proved that he was a U.S. citizen. You understand that? U.S. veteran. And then they lied about him. His name was George Redis, I believe. They lied about him. They then claimed he was a violent, he was pushing back and punching and violent in court, like McLaughlin and Nome and Bondi do every time. One of them today is going to make you sick. And then he was able to prove the opposite. He came out and made a case, and now there's a whole thing happening here. But now he's gotten the Institute of Justice to follow up, and they've got video, guys, and they show you the whole thing. And they lied about this from the very beginning. They've been lying about every single one of these. They're beating up anybody they come across. I shouldn't say it like that, but the cases we've talked about, we've discussed, brown people that they just assume are immigrants, many of which are U.S. citizens. Then when something bad goes wrong, like they shoot somebody, they make up a story. They say they had guns and they were attacking us. And almost every one of these cases I've went through have proven out to be nothing. One we're going to get to in a second, they just dropped all the charges. And it's one that Cash and all the rest, we're all on Twitter saying, we're going to get him, don't worry, it's all coming down. They just dropped the charges. This is a U.S. citizen, a U.S. veteran. This is what they did to him, simply because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. July 10th, 2025.
I see the blockade of agents lined up across the road, and I pull up slowly. Majority of them are all masked up, gas masks because of the tear gas and everything. I put my car in park, I get out. I was just trying to get to work. I'm a
Sorry, I was muted there. So for the podcast, George is pulling up to work at a legal cannabis farm, not illegal, completely on the up and up. He's pulling up, has no idea this is going on, pulls up to a blockade of police and ICE and whatever else. So he has no idea what's going on. He's like, I just have to get to work. I'm on the other side of you guys, right? So that's where this starts. There's no justification for doing anything to him. You literally watch him pull up in a car. And because he looks brown, this is how they react.
U.S. citizen, I don't see why there would be any problem. Agents pulling on my door handles, banging on my windows, trying to break the window, trying to get me out, all while other agents are telling me to reverse and to pull over to the side. Get the f*** out of here, pull over to the side, get back to your car, you're not going to work today. They're just all yelling for me to do different things.
Right. That's super important, guys. Not only are these people completely, I mean, you can see what they're doing is just completely off the rails. There's no guidance. There's no responsibility. There's no real accountability. They're all masked up. There's no identification. There's no warrants. I mean, this is just insane. But on top of that, they go up to these people and they're giving them different directions. Like that woman they claim we just talked about. It'll seem very similar to the one we're going to talk about today, but there's like 4 examples like this where they slammed, they rammed us with their car, they boxed us in, and then they opened fire. The point is that they're going back up, get out of your car, go forward, and they don't know what to do, and they start moving, and they go, they're going to ram us. They shoot the car. It's happened like 4 times already. I mean, I don't know whether that's just because these people are lunatics or they're genuinely like bought into this idea that everyone's out to kill them. I don't understand. But this is a U.S. citizen, and that's how they treated him, just because he pulled up in his car.
They pepper spray me immediately, they drag me out, and they just throw me on the ground.
I mean, right there, I want to point this out again. As a U.S., for anybody for that matter, who has rights, whether you're a green card, visa holder, illegal alien, you all have constitutional rights, despite the stupidity of the partisanship today. So you pull up in your car, they demand you, they break your window, they pull you out, they pepper spray you. In what world is that already justified? And by the way, he's going, I'm an American. Here's my identification. They pepper spray him, they put him on the ground, they arrest him. How do you possibly make sense of that if you even remotely care about the Constitution? If you even remotely care about your rights in this country in any sense? You must understand that as anybody out there who's being honest, this is important for you to be screaming at the rooftops, because it's going harder and harder and getting worse and more ubiquitous every day that we don't acknowledge this is actually happening, as this screaming partisans shout you down for lying about Democrat, whatever they claim is actually going on. You know this is happening.
I joined the Army when I was 18. It just helped me a lot with like finding myself and just being responsible and being disciplined and just learning life, I guess. My son, he's all about video games. I guess he's kind of just like me in that sense. And so with my daughter, she's kind of like my whole world. She's my princess, like, that's the only way I could describe it. They surrounded my car again and they shattered my driver's side window. I was trapped in my car like with tear gas, and you guys just pepper sprayed me.
I'm trying to leave.
They pepper spray me immediately, they drag me out, and they just throw me on the ground. An agent comes, he kneels on my neck, and another agent kneels on my back, all while I'm just letting them do anything they want with me, because I'm not trying to fight them, I'm not trying to resist. Like, just take it. Like, there's nothing you could do, you just gotta take it and hope for the best. And
so the point is, he was arrested with no justification and taken to jail. It shouldn't matter your status at that point. Why is he being, there's no justification. This is not what we pretend we are.
Friday morning, they finished doing our in-processing, and then we see medical. They just ask us questions, and we fill out a paper about our past. And like, based off the answers I had given her, they placed me on suicide watch. I'm naked in like a hospital. Like,
now, if you read the articles, he makes it very clear that that was punitive. That he was telling him, look, you guys are making a mistake. I'm a veteran. I'm a U.S. citizen. And they didn't like it. And so they put him on suicide watch and they kept him there for a week. That's what, I mean, they didn't give him what he needed. I mean, it goes into more detail in the articles about it, but he's not suicidal. And he makes that very clear. Even if you think they felt that way, he's a U.S. citizen. So this shouldn't even be happening in the first place. And they could prove it the entire time.
Gown, and it's this yellow room, the concrete yellow room. They just leave the lights on 24/7 from Friday morning to Sunday afternoon to literally the point when I was released. And they never let me shower. They never let me contact my family or...
You can't call your family? What happened to the rights of a phone call? You know, I mean, I don't need to belabor the point here, guys, but it's just so overwhelming to me how anybody who claims to be a patriot or believe in the Constitution can even pretend for 1 second this is okay. I don't care if this was the only example. This was a willful action that was taken by people who are being empowered by the current administration. And no one's done anything about this.
Talk to an attorney.
And of course, we know this is one of many examples. So in case you missed the last part, no attorney, no family, nothing. All those are his legal right.
Sunday afternoon comes and just says like, you're off suicide watch and like I'm getting released. And that was it. And he just walked away. I'm still locked in that cell for a couple more hours until eventually another officer comes up and they walk me downstairs and that was it. Just you're free to go. All the charges on you are dropped. And you're free to go.
See, the one thing they do constantly here, and this is what they want to scare people. They'll throw every possible random charge they can. I mean, like, you know, you pulled a gun or whatever, and then you look at the list and you can go to jail for 30 years. You didn't do anything wrong. And so now you're terrified. Is this really going to happen? Are these people literally going to lie about me to as far as they can to defend themselves? Yes, it's already happened. And so people then just keep their mouth shut. They hide. They don't speak up. That's what they want from you. It has a chilling effect on speech, on rights, on everything. This is exactly what we've always seen through history, guys. It's happening to us. And you got this, again, the people who call themselves patriots, Pied Pipering you all right into it.
So I was locked up and missed my daughter's birthday for no reason, basically. They just stayed silent. They couldn't give me an answer. And honestly, it was just a terrible feeling. The paper had just said I was arrested for detention pursuant to arrest. That was it. Just basically arrested for being arrested. They came pick me up and she drove me home and my family was there, my kids, and just getting there and seeing their faces and seeing my daughter and my son, and just them running up to me and just like calling for dad and just hugging me was the greatest feeling ever. It felt like just everything else disappeared.
No charges and still has no idea why he was arrested.
Something has to be done. Someone has to be held accountable. Like, I need answers. There's no way I could just sit there and take it.
Yeah.
What they did was...
For the chat, yeah. They smashed his window, his car, no compensation. That never happens. That's the, you know, they're in the process of doing their duty, whatever nonsense they spit out. But so this is just, it's over for him. There's no accountability, nothing. It's out there happening to more people as we speak.
Not right, and no one deserves to go through that. I still love this country. I still love the flag. I still believe in it. Like, what's happening now in our country, it doesn't represent the overall meaning of the flag. The flag means something much more than what's happening now. And it takes more than just one side. It takes all of us. Yes, we can have different views, but being unified is like much more than just having the same beliefs. It's the fact that we could have different beliefs and still stand side by side and still be together.
Now, you guys should definitely share this out, right? Get this stuff out there. You know, in the middle of a 3-hour show, especially how censored and suppressed we are, it tends to reach the people that already, you know, it doesn't tend to reach the people that need to see this. The kind of person out there that's a Republican, conservative, who is uncomfortable with what's happening, but hasn't chosen yet to pull away and is still supporting it and doesn't realize that there are U.S. citizens, veterans and all, who are literally being arrested for no reason, who are being tortured, who are being suppressed, who are being censored all over the place. Get in front of people, guys. You'd be surprised how many people, through maybe willful ignorance or otherwise, just don't recognize the true breadth of what's happening. So here's another example. Oh, first, I wanted to show you these two first. Just generally around the U.S. citizen conversation, right? This is what we're seeing in this country. Again, these are lone examples that should be enough. Are we in a papers, please scenario? Well, we pretend we're not. The whole not stop, you know, the papers, please, whether it's in Russia or Nazi Germany, we always point to that as the line. And here we are where that's completely acceptable to people claiming to be patriots, which is them asking you for your proof of citizenship and saying that like they have to verify that on the street, which is not their, look, you have to understand that no matter where you are, you're not required to verify they can do their due diligence. Unless you're breaking the law, they can't come up and be like, prove to me you're a citizen. If you don't, we're going to take you to jail. They're doing that all over the place. And Trump has been saying that. Stop and frisk. They're all about that, guys. This is not in line with what we believe this country represents.
Just go run your records, fingerprint you back at the station. That's all.
But I'm a U.S. citizen.
So they're like, we have to run your information. He goes, I'm a U.S. citizen.
We have to establish that, and we have to be confident that that's true.
He says we have to establish that. We have to be confident that's true. No, you don't. Only in this, Gestapoist world that we're living in, guys. That's not how that's supposed to work. Now, I'm not going to say that hasn't been argued in past circumstances, but what we're seeing now is a mass deployment of people just walking down the street and going, "Show me your ID." Right? That's not the law. I'm out there in my board shorts going to the beach. I don't have my wallet on me. Like, at the end of the day, it's not your responsibility to do that. You're not violating the law. You have a right to privacy. What they're doing right here is a violation of your constitutional rights and has been ruled as such countless times over the years.
If you have your ID, you can give it to us right here. We can check it out. You're good to go. We'll be on our merry way, but we have to establish your citizenship.
It's not true.
This is wrong.
It is wrong. Now, see, what I sense is this guy just intuitively knows that, we all generally know, that's actually not correct. That's not right. But, not most Americans can articulate the reality behind it. But it is wrong, guys. It's a crime.
Thank you.
No, there's more to it, but this is what's happening all over the country right now. People are being accosted, they're being demanded. This is papers, please, stop and frisk kind of stuff. And this is just not what we believe, what this country is, at least what we pretend it is from the Constitution forward. Scott Greenfield says, U.S. citizens do not have to carry citizenship proof. U.S. citizens do not have to prove their citizenship. U.S. citizens have a constitutional right to be left alone. It's true. Pretty much so does everybody else, by the way. That's constitutional rights for people. That's the reality of the Constitution, despite Americans being convinced otherwise in the last 50 years. So here's some stuff that's really going to bother you. You saw this story. We talked about it, right? The ICE officer says, do something, BITCH. Literally says that, do something. Liberal, that uses both, there was both terms. Before shooting her. Remember that story? Very real. October 7th, attorney for woman shot by Border Patrol claims agent said, do something. And then shot her. U.S. District Judge Heather McShane denied a request by the federal government to detain Martinez and Anthony Ian Santos pending trial. What was that again? I'm trying to remember what I highlighted that for. Oh, that's right. So the bottom line is, what we're getting to today, they just dismissed all the charges. They lied about this, just like they lied about probably 6 other examples just like this two that I've discussed on the show. But I've seen many of them where it's almost weird how similar they are. But so it says that they denied a request by the federal government to detain them. So when this first happened, they didn't even detain them because there wasn't any evidence other than what they were saying. They've been caught lying repeatedly. I just did the whole thing with Tricia McLaughlin alone. How she's been 7 times you can verifiably prove that she has been stating absolutely provable facts or provable lies. I mean, the point is that you could prove that she knew they were lies and she said them anyway. Grok will show you that. But okay, October 7th. So here is November 7th. Border Patrol agent who shot Chicago woman boasts about it in a text message. Here's what he said. A federal agent who shot the woman in Chicago multiple times after he said that she struck his vehicle with her own. He went on and bragged about shooting her and his shooting skills in a text message with other agents. He says, I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. He says, I'm a firearms instructor and I take pride in my shooting skills. I mean, why would that, regardless of the circumstances, be something? This is the kind of air that they're cultivating. That's disgusting. Even if these are criminals, that's not how you should relish in, guys. This is the wrong path. And these are the kind of people that they're using because that works for disgusting power structures. Here is where Kash Patel, this is just David pointing out. Remember when the government called her a domestic terrorist? This woman we're talking about? They did, by the way. How relevant is that? After they call every leftist is a terrorist, seditionist, monster. Okay. They promised to throw the book at her. So the charges must have been based on complete lies. Why? Because they were just completely dropped. Fox News, this is October 6th. FBI Director Kash Patel pledges to bring justice to 2 suspects who allegedly rammed the vehicle. He was just jumping on the thing of the day. We stand by the thing and we're going to fight for you. It's just what they do. Like Bongino going, no public corruption. It's just dumb, guys. It's insulting to our intelligence. Here is the report from yesterday. DOJ dropped charges against woman shot by the CP, the Border Patrol agent in Chicago after being accused of ramming the car. The Department of Justice has abruptly moved to dismiss the indictments against 2 people accused last month of ambushing federal agents conducting an immigration sweep in Chicago. Now, we just saw what they did to George Redis, who, by the way, they also claimed, which you just saw wasn't true, that he was violent and punching and was trying every lie. Car was getting too close. They did the whole thing. They do it every time. They were lying. We talked about the example before where the family was in a car that they got surrounded by people. There was no identification. They didn't know what was happening. Whether you thought they were police or not, they're not legally required to wait if they're not identifying themselves or have a warrant. So he drove away. In no way did they hit anybody, and they literally opened fire on the car with a family in it. Then went to court, and it came out after a long period of time that they didn't even do that. That they didn't hit anybody. They admitted it didn't even happen, but they opened fire on a family because they were driving away. I mean, it's just so sinister. It's just wrong in every possible way. And that's the individual's choice. But that's being allowed and lied about by the power structure. We've seen many examples like this. This is one of them. It says the government filed a motion on Thursday asking the federal judge to dismiss the indictment and exonerate Miramar Martinez and Anthony Santos Ruiz. Not just dismiss, but exonerate. You know why that's important? Because down below, the U.S. government's still over here going terrorist, just like they did with Garcia and all the rest, because they're seemingly incapable or unwilling to ever admit they made a mistake, which is pretty common for government, but in an embarrassing way for this administration. But the government filed it. So that's important, right? So the U.S. government, Trump's administration, is filing this to ask for her to be exonerated, meaning she didn't do it or she's not guilty. And it says who were involved in a collision, and they claim, near 36th Street and South Kenzie Avenue. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Protection Agents, Chicago, that's who they reported this. The case was dismissed Thursday afternoon with prejudice at the Dirksen Federal Courthouse. And the incident set off street protests in Chicago's, Chicago's southwest side, which I'm sure they've been pointed to as examples of Antifa, even though they have a rightful reason to protest whether they need one or not, because they're breaking the law. Now, defense attorneys argued the agent who shot Martinez was responsible for the crash, not the other way around, which is what happened, guys. We keep seeing this over and over. And earlier this month, and remember, we have video of multiple cases like this where they're the ones that ran the car, and then they argue that they did move the car in a dangerous way or that they ran them first, and they keep getting caught lying. I mean, multiple cases. Earlier this month, under questioning, that agent acknowledged he drove his damaged vehicle to the East Coast before the defense attorneys could inspect it. I mean, this is exactly like, oh, weird, Tyler Robinson's video just gone, or Epstein's video, or any number of things, and they keep doing this. You just drove your car. You're an enforcement officer, and you drive your car involved in a shooting, by the way, to the East Coast. It says he also was also confronted with group text messages in which he appeared to brag about the shooting. This is the guy. So he drives his car away and hides evidence, and that's okay. It says after the judge dismissed the charges, Santos Ruiz left without comment, but Martinez, a daycare worker, spoke to reporters. Well, she simply said it's been hard. It's, they're lying about her. And she says this was a bad shoot, or this was the attorney, I believe. It was a violation of the policy of their border policy. It was a bad shoot. They know it. It's going to come out eventually. I argue it will too. But this is the first step, the dismissal of the incident. They hope that'll let it bury. That's what we were hired to do, and that's what we did. He said. I mean, the reason this is dismissed is because the facts in those press releases were not true. I mean, remember, they called for her to be exonerated. There's no misunderstanding that. This case was going to be a winner at trial regardless, and they knew that. These agents are in reports saying things that are just not true. And that's the most common part of this conversation right now. It's come out in every one of these cases. And whether they win or not, there's provable examples where they're manipulating the truth. And remember the one I just talked about, by the way, where they shot that person in the car, the family? They admitted they didn't run him over, but they still arrested the guy under what was it? It was some random charge about violence. It had nothing to, and they're the ones that initiated it. But they're so outside the law right now that they're doing whatever they want. The Trump administration's not doing anything. So they're going, good, we can do what we want. It says then it goes on to say the case was, the agents, they were lying. So when you read the next press release, I mean, consider that, right? So when they say the next thing, whether it's Noam or Bondi or Trump or any of them, consider that they're lying again, like you should with all of them, left or right. Despite the DOJ dropping the charges, the Department of Homeland Security doubled down Thursday. This is what's so crazy to me. See, this is the difference between the Noam, Bondi, DOJ overlap and then the people who are actually doing these things, the lawyers that are there, the people that are filing this stuff. They're not, I mean, it's hard to say that literally all of them are this stupid or willing to make themselves look this bad. So they exonerate her. They file and they go, she didn't do it. And then they come out, Noam and Bondi and the rest, and double down, maintaining that, quote, Border Patrol law enforcement officers were ambushed by domestic terrorists. Like they just don't know how to stop. And it says our law enforcement shows incredible restraint and prudence, and they're the best ever. So the person you admitted in court didn't do it wrong, didn't do anything wrong. You just said was a terrorist. You know why? So the idiots online can go, that's a terrorist and Democrat lies and radical judges, even though their argument proved she didn't do it. But see, the Nick Sorters and Johnson of the world aren't going to care to look for that. Neither will their followers. It's just basic manipulation, guys. I mean, that's so disgusting to me. How they're just blatantly misrepresenting this. They're lying to you. As Crystal Ball points out, and here's the actual court document, it appears the Border Patrol may have just straight up attempted to murder this Chicago woman and bragged about how many holes they put in her body. They lied and said that she attacked them first, but now have dropped all the charges. And if you read the whole thing, he admits they didn't even happen, or really that he drove the car away, but the other examples show that it wasn't the way it went down. And it says, this is the level of violent lawlessness Trump has unleashed on our communities. Now, let's be clear. It's to a degree I've never seen before, but this is not new. Rampant lawlessness was a term that was coined during Biden's administration, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was Trump before that, but the point is it's not unique to Trump alone. And I think that was George Galloway. And rampant lawlessness is where we are today, and it's been building ever since. This one takes the cake here, guys. This is just so disgusting to me. Not just because of what happened, but because of the way Newsweek frames this. Man detained, well, I shouldn't say it like that. We'll get into it. Man detained by ICE, found dead. Not even close to the first one, by the way. Hanging with hands and feet tied. November 18th. Now look what it says. Warning. This article contains descriptions of suicide. That's what they wrote right there. Now what's wild to me is they write that, but then nowhere in the article does it make clear that the government is in fact arguing that he killed himself. And the reason I know that is just by looking into this deeper. And the point is, this is just grok. You could find it in other, peripheral arguments. It simply says, according to ICE and the Pennsylvania State Police investigation, his death was ruled a suicide by hanging. So keep that in mind. A Chinese immigrant was found dead in an ICE facility with his hands and feet tied behind him. I mean, are we serious? Is this Gary Webb all over again, guys? That his feet and hands were both tied behind his back and somehow was able to hang himself? I mean, I don't even, are we being made fun of? I mean, why would even Newsweek even write without that? They should be, as a journalist, going, that's insanely stupid, or whatever, balanced way you can write that. Well, clearly, if his hands or feet were tied, that he wouldn't be able to hang himself. I mean, I'm just so infuriated by where this is going today. And it says Guy died 4 days after entering an ICE facility in Pennsylvania on August 5th, with an agency report stating he was found by agents with a piece of cloth around his neck. I mean, feels reminiscent of a lot of different overlaps we talked about. Like a Bourdain Epstein kind of a thing. And guys, there's something really off here. And I think it's pretty self-evident what this means. After an autopsy report, his family's calling for more answers. Yes. I mean, they're livid, if you understand this, because they're clearly stating, the more you look into this, that there is no way this was suicide, because they're not stupid. As attention numbers have spiked with ICE facilities under the Trump administration, deaths have also begun to rise. It's not unique. Accused of accessing a device issued to another who did not authorize its use. It was some kind of weird, like it's I think under some national security overlap, but the point is it says that he basically had access to a device for some kind of conspiracy, access to device issued to another who didn't authorize the use. They're not really giving you the details. Theft by deception, false impression, conspiracy. Okay, maybe he's a Chinese spy. Doesn't change the fact that you literally threw this guy in the cell, tied his hands and feet behind his back, and then hung him, I guess. How in the world you could think anything other than that? Or maybe somebody in there in the maybe it was an inmate. But okay, so that's what they claim was some kind of a using of an electronic device without authorization. And it says Gee, who lived in Queens, New York, so he wasn't, he lived in New York, was convicted of the first two of these charges by a court of common pleas in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, on July 31st. And he was sentenced to 6 to 12 months with credit for time served. So essentially, for the conspiracy device charge, they said, well, you're guilty, but you've been in jail this whole time, so time served. So he was released and then scooped up by ICE. Doesn't that sound like everything we keep hearing? So the court rules he served his time. He was clearly here. The point is that they're taking somebody who's going through process and then just grabbing him because he's an immigrant. And then he ends up dead. And it says 4 days later on August 5th, officers at the processing center in Phillipsburg say they found him in a shower with his cloth around his neck. Despite getting him onto the ground and attempting life-saving measures, he was pronounced dead 40 minutes later. An autopsy report seen by Newsweek showed Gee was found tied with a bed sheet with linens around his wrists and ankles in what the report described as a hog-tied position. You know what that means? That's not just tied. That means they were tied together behind his back. That's what hog tying is. You want to explain to me how somebody can even remotely, do anything at all, let alone hang themselves with both their feet and hands tied together, than that tied together behind your back. The medical examiner noted that there had been other reported incidents of people who had hung themselves having done something similar. Am I is this the Twilight Zone? You're telling me that this medical examiner is telling you that somebody before has hung themselves with both hands and tied. Do I even need to say it? I'm just blown away by this. This feels so incredibly wrong that we are being gaslit from the top down by everything. I'm going to follow up on this. Bottom line is there's been numerous people that have died in mysterious cases in ICE that nobody wants to talk about. People that have been shipped to places all over the world still to this day. Nobody, and Americans who want to claim to be fighting for our rights are the ones who are screaming the loudest about why this needs to happen. It's just a little bit overwhelming, isn't it? Now, I think actually what I'm going to do here for where we at on time, about 2 hours, what I'm going to plan on doing tomorrow is to get into this. What I'm going to briefly show you what we're going to talk about, but I think it's important for this to be given more time. I don't have as much time as I'd want to get into on this, but the simple point here that I really hope you will read. Robert wrote the first article, Israel's anti-Muslim Hasbara and its agenda to eliminate free speech. And he was very quickly proven correct with what they did. He predicted exactly what happened. And then followed up with the next one, how Israel's using anti-Muslim propaganda to seize American free speech. It's a very important discussion. Now, the point is that he called that they would do this. Now, it wasn't, other people have seen this coming, but the way he kind of read what would be used and how it would be done, I think was very insightful. Abbott in Texas designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. Now, there's cases to be made about parts of and overlapping connections about the Muslim Brotherhood. But in overall point, it's not about what the case is not even about the groups. It's about using any tangential connection to make the network terrorism. That's why it's the transnational criminal organization. And let alone the Council on American Islamic Relations that's just calling out Palestine and Israeli crimes. But what's interesting is that just like we saw with past Palestinian groups, the designation, or like Antifa for that matter, will then just be used to arbitrarily connect groups and shut down groups that have a right to free speech and a right to any. The case is the same. What crime are you claiming? I'm not even saying that you can't find something, but if you're claiming a crime or claiming some kind of network of criminal activity, then make the case. The argument that because they're Muslim, therefore it just gets accepted. If there's crimes, then arrest somebody. Otherwise, what you're saying is because of the ideas they have, these people are criminals. And this is where we keep getting pushed. Here's Senator Cruz going, great job. Randy Fine and others just showing you their disgusting nature. Here, Ilhan Omar, regardless of whether you support her or not, I don't support any of these politicians, and I think she's just like the rest, comes out and says, you have no place in elected office. You know, as an elected politician. This guy's such a clown. And says, frankly, you shouldn't even have a place in America because she's a Muslim. That's literally it, guys, because he says Muslims are disgusting and dangerous and evil. Why this person is allowed in the conversation is beyond me. Now, you're allowed, you could say and think what you want, but you're detestable. You're disgusting. You're a bigot. You are an openly disgusting person. And that's how this is supposed to work, right? Everyone can have free speech, or they have the right to free speech. It's not given to you. But we're all allowed to go, and you're disgusting, Randy. You go sit in that corner. We don't want you involved. That's how that should work. But instead, the Loomers and the Randy Fines are being thrown in front of you because there's something else driving the bus. And here's what he says. Mamdani thinks Jews gathering in synagogues should be illegal. No, he doesn't. That's insanely, and that is such a grotesquely opposite. You can listen to him talk for that matter. I don't trust Mamdani. He wants more government in your life. I don't. I think they're all politicians. The point is, he's just lying. And Torah Jews, a Jewish organization that simply calls out Zionism, says you are knowingly gaslighting to stir hyperbole and scare American Jews into supporting Zionism. And who's driving that? Zionism and Israel, who doesn't care about anything else. It's all so very clear. But the point is they're driving this in to be able to suppress your rights, to suppress your speech. And it's already having acts, already reverberating. Now, CAIR, I think that's how you say it, CAIR, the group, what was it again? I always forget which way it goes. The Council on American Islamic Relations, they have sued. And they're calling it unconstitutional defamatory. And so this is the case, guys. Unless you're claiming there's criminal activity that you can prove, which they're not doing, all you're really doing is saying you can't speak because you have bad ideas. And this is supposed to be completely antithetical to everything that we believe in this country. But apparently not when Trump does it, I guess, or the partisan side, So here's a clip that shows you how this is being driven into our world. And this is Carrie Burgess shared this. And this goes back to the influence through media and everything else. But it's just to show you that doing this, through censorship, or going back to the beginning point about the algorithmic act and everything else, it's all closing in around us unless we do something about this. And this is just to show you that it's been going on a very long time. And it's obviously in this conversation being driven by Israel. It's not even secret.
Israel decided to set up permanent institutional structures to control how Americans would think about the Middle East. In 1983, Israel launched the Hasbara project, the aim of which was to ensure good press in the U.S. media. The goal was to train Israeli diplomats in communications and public relations. For example, they trained press officers in Israeli consulates in the U.S. to ensure that American journalists would write stories favorable to Israel. As one of these press officers said in the 1980s, he had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with journalists, and that a typical day would involve conversations with producers at leading news and TV talk shows about the content of the program. He described it as, in fact, quote, a joint formulation of ideas. This targeting of the American media goes on in the present day.
The abuse against a journalist is something you just have to take into account. If you both literally and metaphorically, if you work in the Middle East, you've got to take the sticks and stones. What I object to is that my American colleagues don't seem to be prepared to do that.
And even in Israel itself, you can find the main daily newspapers, like Haaretz, for example, provides coverage on the ground and analysis, some of which has views on the conflict that that would be almost beyond the pale for an American journalist, say at the New York Times, to write.
The main major television news networks and newspapers in the United States have long ago got their fear to be supreme over their duties as journalists. They are not monitoring the centers of power when it comes to the relationship between America and the Middle East, Israel and America and the Arabs and the Palestinians. They will not ask the right questions. They will not report it using the correct words. They will not confront the reality, and they've given up. And I think once you acquire fear, it's very difficult to get rid of it.
Well, I was trying to find really quickly. I've got one, just the text message point, but it interestingly overlapped with Charlie Kirk, right? And exactly what Charlie Kirk was coming to terms with, that Zionism was infiltrating the conversation. He was being manipulated and called out by Zionists who were angry that he was saying things about Israel. And he made a point on Candace Owens' show to say, how is it that I am able to speak less about this than people in a foreign country? Like, and this is so important. And this drives to what was a factor, I believe, in Charlie's death. But here's just the clip to draw that back to with the text messages where she talks about this, which was denied until this was proven, even admitted by Turning Point USA.
Actual group chat, which happened 2 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. There were 9 people in total on this chat, including Charlie and Rob McCoy. I'm going to protect the names of the other 7 for now. To be clear, I might actually release a name every day this week, but he would attack me for telling the truth about the pressure that he was facing. To all of I'm thinking a huge look. So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker.
By the way, I forgot to think about this last time. $2 million a year. You know, and what's crazy about it is, yeah, you look at their work. Turning Point USA is a behemoth, right? It's clearly influential. But, you know, you look at the content. Charlie Kirk in his studio, doing his thing, talking about things, which usually is far less sourced than what we do, which is usually far less insightful and deep and analytic, you know, yes, like all the rest of them. But there's plenty of things that I saw him discuss that I agreed with, talked about. But what's interesting, $2 million, that was one donor. And yet we can put out more in-depth, more important, more, you know, what's the right word? More, you know, just in-depth content with the dollar donations coming in the mail. Think about that for a second and understand where this world needs to go. And these massive powerhouses of money and influence are, as he found out, being manipulated.
I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this.
There you go. Right? I mean, there's really no misunderstanding that, guys. Think that's crazy. So here's what Glenn said. Sean is writing, the Larry David Ellison media consolidation is scary because it shows a future where Zionists win. HBO, CNN, CBS, TikTok, etc., all under the same roof, destroying all evidence of genocide and blacklisting anyone who speaks out against it. We have to protect that future. Protect the, you know, the future where the truth is there. He meant prevent them hiding all the information. Glenn writes, the minute the American public starts turning against Israel and the U.S. financing of that country, which is happening right now, the world's richest and most fanatical pro-Israel billionaires start buying up large media outlets and TikTok, then install Barry Weiss as an ex-IDF soldier to control content. Isn't that exactly what Charlie Kirk was just pointing to? Is that exactly what that clip was just discussing that goes back decades? Yes, it should not be that hard. And this is my point. Americans see it, guys. We're there. It's the people in the driver's seat, the people that are the most influential, the ones getting $2 million a year that just seem to not want to acknowledge it. I wonder why that is, even though in many cases they've been calling certain things out for a long time. On Twitter, to make this case about the clip and what he's saying, you might have seen this going around. And this is not new, but it's interesting to highlight in real time. Xpilled Media says Twitter deleted Hebrew translations because Jews were calling for genocide on an app without getting suspended. Now, the point would be obviously about my opinion, the Zionist overlap to it, not just Jews, but that seems to be largely the example since it's Hebrew, we're talking about Israel. So you could decide to make it only about Jewish people, but you have to understand this is about Zionism. I'm always going to make that point because I believe that's the obvious reality. But nonetheless, Jews are included in the conversation. In this case, the majority of the point. So it says, now the reason I'm saying that is to make sure it's not also that we shouldn't be saying Jews, because they're obviously a part of the conversation. Somebody asked Grok, why? Why they delete the translations? Here's what Grok said. Translation from Hebrew was disabled. So just to make sure we see that is what they did, because it often amplified inflammatory or policy violating content. They're admitting it, like calls for violence to a global audience via inaccurate or literary renditions. X prioritizes free speech for opinions, but, you know, the old saying, everything before the word but's meaningless, limits features that exacerbate harm. Oh, that sure feels like the algorithmic policy we're just talking about, right? And all they use is the reason they just delete and hide what they want. without suspending originals. No evidence supports targeting any group. It's about platform integrity. Okay, the bottom line, the one group in the world, the Hebrew conversation is being removed from the translation. Okay. And they say it's because they were amplifying violence. Do you believe that would happen to anybody else? If you were over here as any other group going, violence, bad things, kill, genocide, they're going to go, we'll just turn down the audio. No, they will censor you. And David says, hey, Grok, has Twitter done the same to any other languages? Has it done this to Arabic, for example? Or is it only Hebrew hate speech they are protecting? She said, Grok says, to my knowledge, Twitter has not disabled translations for Arabic or any languages in the same way. So there's 2 points to take from that. Right? Either it's just as prevalent and they're just simply hiding the Jewish side of it or the Hebrew side in particular specifically, or this in and of itself proves that the rhetoric, the hateful, violent rhetoric is coming largely from one group versus the other, despite the overfocus on Arabic and Islam. I think it's a little bit of both. And it's not just circumstantial, but think about how crazy that is. Decentralized News adds to that. Twitter is now rolling out a feature that purports to show which country a user is based in. I'm sure we all know that's likely not going to happen for the ones that they want to work with, like Authentics and CHEQ and their bots they use. But it says, for now, this only appears to be visible to the account owner, which is just how it's starting, which doesn't even mean anything at the moment. But it says, try visiting your own profile and tapping join data. Now it says, for some users, a warning icon appeared and it says, look, you're being connected via proxy. Already something's wonky about it. You know what that shows me? I think it's because right now they're setting up a way for people to be shown for something they're not. You, of course, will show where you're from, but the people they don't want to, or they're insiders or whatever else. I think it's obvious. By the way, anyone can use a VPN. That doesn't matter anyway. So at the end of the day, this is just a ploy, if you really understand it, and they know that. But in overlapping parts to Israel, Dave DeCamp says, interesting detail that when Jonathan Pollard moved to Israel in 2020, he flew on Adelson's plane, or owned by Adelson. Which, if you don't know this whole story, Pollard is an Israeli spy that was caught in the United States, and Netanyahu worked with Bill Clinton to make sure he got sent home and then gave him a hero's welcome, which is self-explanatory. And the point is, he flew home on Adelson's plane, who is the one currently funding the Trump administration. You just can't make this stuff up, guys. It's like, it just all is right around you. It's everywhere you look. Trump is desperate for Miriam Adelson's cash. What she's demanding is West Bank annexation, which, by the way, jumped it over here. There we go, is also still happening. We'll come back to that in 2 seconds. The point, and then this here too. Where was it? Here. Derek's recent article. The technocratic Trump administration, the Zionist infiltration expands. It just simply shows you that if we're going to make a case about America first, and then you can acknowledge that this known spy who was arrested by U.S. authorities was given a celebratory welcome and Adelson's plane was the one that flew him home, doesn't that seem like Israel first, at quite literally at the expense of Americans' interests? Yes, it does, which is no different than right this moment. And that Trump is now being funded by the very person who flew the Israeli spy away from the United States and welcomed him home as a hero. Same thing they're doing with the rapist from said Tiemann torture camp. The same thing they did with any number of overlapping, but people that come home and are celebrated for the terrible things they do. Include this for you. Now, also, Mike Huckabee held a meeting with Jonathan Pollard, who spied on U.S. for Israel. Dude, November 20th. Now, it says the Times said it first learned of the meeting from 3 U.S. officials that, when asked about it, Pollard confirmed that it took place. Pollard said it was the first time a U.S. official hosted him at a U.S. government office building since he was released from prison for serving 30 years for spying. He was in the United States. Pollard was initially given a life sentence for his espionage, but was released on parole in 2015. In 2020, Pollard parole ended and he was able to move to Israel, where Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed him like a hero. He did. The White House is not aware of this meeting, says the White House, says Caroline Leavitt. Seriously? The president stands by our ambassador, Mike Huckabee. So the ambassador for Israel, who is a blind Zionist, a religious Zionist, by the way, is out here meeting with Israeli spies in the United States, and you didn't know about that, but we stand by him. I mean, again, that speaks for itself, guys. That's wild. If that was a Chinese spy, would they be like, whatever, we stand by him? Clearly not. It speaks for itself. Ryan Grimm, was it again? Sagar Injeti says, U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, welcomed convicted U.S. spy to the United States. Ryan Grimm says Netanyahu demanded Bill Clinton release convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard after telling Clinton Israel knew of the tapes between him and Lewinsky, which arguably was set up by Israel, according to multiple reports. Clinton did not do it after George Tenet threatened to resign as CIA chief if he did so. Obama released him in 2015, and now he's meeting with Huckabee. This is just a broken reality, guys. Now, on top of that, two things to skip over. You can watch, maybe I'll play one of them for you real quick. As Max writes, it's wild that Israeli foreign government agents are literally walking through halls of Congress threatening U.S. lawmakers. That's what they're doing. Today, Israel still protects the Jewish terrorist who murdered Arab-American civil rights activist Alex Odeh with a pipe bomb at his Santa Ana, California office. Or any number of other examples, like USS Liberty, for example, where they know what's going on. We are captured. The government, rather, of this country has been captured a long time. We all see it at this point. It's mainstream. Here they are, literally walking through the halls of Congress, threatening sitting members of Congress.
We are going to Rashida Tlaib's office. Arab Israelis to send her a clear message. Just wait for it.
Now, can you imagine if these were, if this was Americans in Chinese government or Americans in the Israeli government?
Send a clear message to Rashida Tlaib. Everybody, don't support terrorism. Fuck Hamas.
And why they say that? Because she supports Palestine. That's it.
فهمتي ولا أهون منها.
Right. And these are the same people that will hand them pagers and basically not even subtly threaten them with violence.
Stop supporting Hamas.
With 400 children.
Stop
400 children who are trapped in Israeli prison.
Stop supporting terrorism. So, as we are in the Congress right now, we can see definitely useful idiots coming to support the terrorist organization.
Jews say, let Gaza live. Those are the useful idiots. A Jewish person who you're supposed to say, that's the state of the Jews, right? Except not when they don't agree with genocide or Zionism for that matter. So that means it's about genocide and Zionism, clearly.
Hamas. They're shouting
and torture an American child, Mohammed Ibrahim.
What does that mean?
Stop putting your finger.
I mean, just imagine the hubris, right? The pompous think of what it takes to do this. You are literally a foreign government agent of a genocide committing government walking through a country or through the halls of going into congressional offices and leveling threats, or at the very least being this kind of bombastic. It just seems insane to me how we don't recognize what this shows us. It shows us this.
It's unquestionable that the Epstein business was heavily influenced, let me put it that way, by Mossad.
And so that's somehow emblematic on these huge geopolitical issues.
Yes, I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon in 2002. The Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad. They did not need any identification to get through the river entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department. Occasionally, they went to the second most powerful man, Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and they had run of the Pentagon. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said to my boss one time, "Hell, I don't run my building. Mossad does."
Just all right there. And thank you for reminding me, as someone points out in the chat, for all these supposed American first politicians. Almost 9 months now. Almost 9 months. This third generation, born in Florida, American citizen is being held by Israel with no charge, who has lost tons of weight, who's dealing with all sorts of illnesses. No charge, guys, for throwing a rock at a random Israeli car. That's what they claim anyway. He's in prison and as American. I mean, I don't hear any of these America First people screaming about that at all. Nobody cares other than actual Americans who actually care about American constitutional rights. I just think it's insane how clear this can be. And make sure you check out Derek's 3-part series, The Technocratic Trump Administration, which dovetails with the idea of public-private partnerships as well as Zionism, which I think is all part of the same thing. Now, lastly, just understand what we're dealing with here. This is drone footage from southern Gaza captured by AP. And this is why, as they say, they don't want anybody looking. I mean, there's no misunderstanding what this is, guys. That's genocide. That's complete. That is what, at least the effort of not one stone on another stone. That's Amalek. That's the biblical prophecy they're pushing for. They're literally destroying everything about them. If you want to pretend like this is them bombing, remember when they were going pinpoint targeting specific targets? We don't broadly bomb. I mean, come on, guys. We all know this, though. And again, I argue that everyone watching this probably already knows this, and it's the ones that need to see it that will never know this is here. But help me, get it out there, guys. This is an obvious genocide, and this is what's happening. This is what your government's supporting. The UN Security Council has approved a U.S. draft resolution. This was on the 17th on Gaza with 13 votes in favor. Now, this has already happened. The point is they're claiming that this is some kind of a win. And this is what they're saying by the U.S. government. A vote against this resolution is a vote to return to war. So what they're essentially saying is give us control over this, destroy everything Palestinian, or that means war. Well, they're both war, guys. You're literally still bombing them. You're literally still ethnically cleansing them and still encroaching with your yellow line. But they want you to make it seem like they're the ones ending this, which is what Trump is doing. This is what they're aiming for, guys. The Great Gaza Trust, the thing that all the Republican talking heads acted like was a fake release. It wasn't. We've been talking about this for a very long time. The Gaza Freedom Cities, technocratic dystopia. That's what this is. Max Blumenthal points out the U.S. military is now directly involved in the administration of the siege of Gaza, which they always have been, but now they're publicly telling you that. They're literally on the ground. Here he is saying, we ended the war in Gaza 2 days ago. He said that on the 19th. On the 19th, Israel's, rather the day he said this, but they ended it 2 days ago. The day he said this, or excuse me, that is 19th. An Israeli strike killed at least 28 Palestinians in Gaza that day. And it's not, there's plenty more than that. But here he is talking about it as if it's over 2 days ago and they're still bombing. They're still conducting operations and you can prove it. And then he'll talk about that later. But we ended it. It's over. Like we defeated ISIS 17 times, 100% every time. Linda Melman, on the 20th, the next day, says, imagine having so much impunity that you can violate a truce 10,000 times and not face a single consequence. UN, the United Nations, reports that 7,500 airspace violations by Israel and 2,500 ground incursions by its troops in Lebanon during the year-long truce. Now, it's weird how little Lebanon gets talked about. Craig Murray was one of the only ones I saw really calling that out every day, showing you the violations, but they're supposed to have a ceasefire to this very point. And nobody talks about that. They violate it constantly, and yet then outwardly still pretend like there's a ceasefire, which is what they're trying to accomplish with Gaza. Now, this really irks me. We talked exactly about this. This is exactly what I predicted. There's the footage of them showing you all those, remember those concrete yellow blocks they put out? Israel has now moved to expand that area under the control in Gaza on Thursday following yesterday's attacks, killing more people. What they're doing is physically moving the yellow concrete blocks that demarcate the yellow line, which was already a violation of the ceasefire, to stop them from going back to their locations. And all they did was encroach and increase and take more territory. That's what it is. Now they move them forward a little more and a little more. And eventually there will be nothing left for the Palestinians. That's what they're doing. It's not even secret. And yet they want you to praise them for ending something that never even slowed down. The blocks were moved around 300 meters westward. They're just simply encroaching them. If you don't remember the point, it was let me see if I can just get a picture for you real quick. Here, this might be it. I think it's BM showing it. Oh, come on. Let's see. There's an image. I'm sure there'll be an image. Let's see. Come on. There we go. So here's what I'm talking about. So you see, you guys can see that? Yeah, okay. So remember this. This is how it started. And it was 58% of all of Gaza. They claim that was just a rebuild for them. But even though they weren't doing that, and even though they were bombing everywhere anyway, all they've done was encroach that yellow line inward. And so their territory got smaller. It's just a matter of time, guys. And everyone's allowing this to happen. The people that should have the ability to do something about it are. Now, also, as I was just before I went live, I made fun of, this one right here. Hold on. Alex Jones back in May 9th predicting, he says, Alex Jones' prediction that President Trump would completely cut ties with Benjamin Netanyahu comes true. Oh, funny how that one worked out. I just simply shared it today going, how'd that work out for you, Alex? There's just so many examples like this. It's just so funny how that's, I mean, countless. But here he is telling you that they've cut ties. Now, clearly they did not. Clearly they're more connected than ever because that was never actually happening. My point is to show you this. Where were we? Right here. And recognize that they came out again and said that Trump and them are, Netanyahu said he's weaning off aid. What did all the Jones types come out and say? They're weaning off the aid. And guess what was actually happening? Israel seeks a 20-year military deal. It's what's already been happening. The $38 billion over 10, but they increase it every chance they get. And what's Trump doing? Looking for an increase. How is that weaning off if you're increasing the amount they get every year? Because they're just playing you all. That's what's happening. Israel's seeking a new 20-year security agreement with the United States, doubling the usual term and adding America First provisions to win Trump administration support, according to officials speaking with Axios. It says, while the past agreement promised Israel about $4 billion, $3.8 billion a year in military aid, and Israel is likely to seek at least that much going forward, passing such a deal would now be more complicated because of, genocide, I guess. The current 10-year memorandum of understanding, the MOU, signed in 2016 under Obama, expires in 2028. Oh, we better hurry. Got to get them more money as fast as we can. Can't have them get close to that 4-year window. What is it, 20? So 3 more years. There have been 3 10-year framework agreements, 3 of them. 1998, $12.3 billion, 2008, $32 billion, 2016, $38 billion. Trump did it first, or rather to the 38. He was the one that did it then. Now, I should say first. Obviously, I meant that in the sense of the $38 billion to bring it there. 2024, during the Gaza war, Congress and the Biden administration approved a multi-billion-dollar package. See, it's not partisan, guys. They're all on the same page. My point is to show you that they're out there going, we're going to change this, and they're literally increasing what they want. This is, I almost guarantee it's going to happen. It certainly could end up not for some reason or another, but I believe this is what's on the table. Now, of course, in the meantime, Israel's received its 1,000th aircraft carrying U.S. military supplies. So that's Trump still giving them. Alex, they cut ties. Well, here's more weapons. Here's more funding. They're blindly doing whatever they ask, despite the narratives, and continuing to occupy the West Bank, moment by moment, seizing a major Roman-era historical site because they can. And at the end of the day, I'll play these in the next show. It's a very good clip, by the way. Just, we need to rethink. Veterans are out there kind of reevaluating what was really going on in the wars they fought. I'm trying to tell you guys, it will come out eventually when it's just too obvious and the Tuckers and Candace Owens make the point. But I've been saying this for a year or even longer than that. People are clearly breaking through the narratives right now. You've got random people having podcasts with other average people about holy things they never touched on. Very important to think about. The point is, as he says, the United States killed 1 million innocent people in Iraq. And he's thinking about what he did and realizing that he was not doing the right thing. U.S. African Command launches a series of airstrikes in Somalia, still happening there. Peace president, right? Aaron Mate points out, despite the screeching about what they're claiming is happening in Ukraine, clearly the reality is, as he writes, everyone shrieking that the new U.S. peace plan betrays Ukraine is in fact betrayed Ukraine by exploiting its divisions and backing a coup. Here's Zelensky back in the beginning, as we showed you then, saying there are those in the West who don't mind a long war because it would mean exhausting Russia. That's exactly what we said when this first started, even if this means the demise of Ukraine and comes at the cost of Ukrainian lives. So what they're doing now is not that, and it's always been a manipulation, and I can almost promise you this does not come to an end. What he's actually claiming, he wants like a real peace. He's wanted that from the very beginning, as he went out and tried to say that to the Azov movement, and they laughed at him. He wasn't in control. I don't think he ever really has been. Here's Max Blumenthal pointing out what these people are saying about Venezuela. I mean, it's being driven hard right now, and none of this has to do with democracy, guys, despite that always being their narrative.
Has fostered the socialist plague that has spread across Latin America. It's the Venezuelans. It's corrupt, dirty Venezuelan money that underwrote the Petro campaign. They funneled money into Mexico. They funneled money into Brazil. Once we have democracy restored in Venezuela, all of that subversion money that has been underwriting the socialist campaigns around the region dries up.
Yeah, how's that working in this corrupt country? Clearly, democracy has just saved us from corruption, right?
So does the oil revenue.
Even though we don't even have that, and even though we shouldn't want mob rule, These are just buzzwords, guys, and they still think we're back in the 90s, apparently.
The Cuban regime, all of the support to the Nicaraguans. We forget about what Ortega is doing to the Nicaraguan people. It's a travesty.
Seriously? Like we don't know about these stories, guys? I mean, my God. Like, this is what's so crazy to me is these people are out there pushing narratives that literally everybody knows about because they are trapped in their own cycle. Because the people that they think they need to bow to are the ones that want them saying that or agree. So they don't care what we think. They never have. The difference is now we just all see they're lying. We all have the facts, and they're just keeping the cycle going. It's a dying empire, guys. I mean, we have to start acknowledging that. That's not because I want that, and that doesn't mean we can't stop that from happening and change it in a positive direction. But what they're doing is driving us into collapse. I think you know why I think that. Something else is driving it. But here is what Alex Jones had to say about that Venezuelan invasion. Rather, he interviews Harrison, interviews Patrick Barn, who's making the case for why a U.S. war with Venezuela is the most necessary war since the American Revolution and the Civil War. Yeah, clearly not very much driving in this is what they do. Oh, by the way, get methylene blue, even though it's really bad for you. David Icke says, okay, better go on killing innocent fishermen then. Oops, sorry, drug traffickers, and invade Venezuela to install the Israel-controlled Peace Prize winner who promises to sell off the country to foreign corporations. Isn't that globalism, Alex? Isn't that everything you've claimed to fight against? But it's okay because Trump said and David simply says that'll sort it and think all of that oil. Well done, you. Just sad is the same point as always. And the reality is, as you should know by now, if you watch any of the honest content out there, here's October 17th. Israel says Venezuela's Machado voices support in call to Netanyahu. This is the person they want in there. What Jones supports, what all of them point to. The very person who supposedly won the Peace Prize, even though she supports a genocide right now. And on top of that, realize she literally wrote a letter to Netanyahu asking him to illegally regime change the country. Alex Rubinstein. Here's the letter from Maria Corina Machado to Netanyahu. And this is a very public story, easy to look up. And again, your daily reminder that this American citizen is rotting away in an Israeli prison and they don't care about it. All these fake America first, this is the one thing. Have you ever heard Benny Johnson talk about this? Have you ever heard Nick Sorta talk about this? Have you ever heard Alex Jones talk about this? And maybe he has. I haven't heard it. Of all of them, it would make sense because he's the one that tends to go, the thing, and then I support Trump blindly anyway. But my point is that none of them seem to care. How does that make sense to you? He's an American citizen, not naturalized. He was born here, but that shouldn't matter anyway. Include these for you. Just so crazy sometimes, guys, you know, how obvious all it is. But as always, guys, I appreciate your support. We just can't do this without you. And I'm glad somebody out there still cares enough to fight, right? To do something. Never are we calling for violence. I don't believe that's the answer. Violence begets violence, but I do believe that we need to fight. I think that's obvious. I think we're dealing with a major battle here. And I think what's happening is constantly, moment to moment, is just kind of like degradation. I mean, it is removing things. It's destroying us. In my mind, I'm seeing like a dissolving, like a slow erosion. Every wave that comes in, every attempt and every lie and then moment by moment, a little more is pulled away, and it's a bad analogy because I don't think it can stop the ocean. My point though, is that we need to do something. We need to step in, build the analogy, build a wall. I don't know, but do something to stop that continual erosion because the reality is we all continue to see it. Now, maybe you're of the mind that you need to do that to save the Constitution. I think that's like the lunacy and contradictory, counterintuitive, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. All I ask, if you think that, is, just recognize the danger in allowing a power structure to do the very thing they claim the other side's doing to stop the other side from doing it. And then what that allows them, right? What that gains them. And then recognize whatever side we're talking about, have you ever in your life or anyone's life ever seen them give back power? It hasn't happened. So why would we give them power to do something illegal that then will never be given back? Seems pretty self-evident to me. But I know you guys know this. That's why you're here. Please help me get this out to people. Make some clips. Let me know what you want to see. Tag me on Twitter. I'm trying to get more clips going in general, but it's just a lot going on. But help us get the reach out. Help us get the information out because, they can't stop the organic reach. They can't stop you from handing this link to somebody. They can't stop you from tagging your friends or sending information or simply relaying the source material and having a conversation about it. That's something that they can't, at least right now, stop you from doing. And that is why we continue to grow, despite censorship, despite financial suppression and lawsuits, which I think about every single day. That's a win. I mean, can you imagine where we'd be if we weren't being stepped on every second? But even despite all of that, a lot of us are out there still fighting through and still reaching people. I hope that bothers the hell out of them, and I think that's a win. Don't let the partisan real black pill overlap make you think that this isn't possible, guys. I know it is. Who knows what's going to happen? But why wouldn't you fight? Thank you for tuning in. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.